Okay, welcome everybody. This is Steve Child, Chairman. I'm having trouble getting onto the Zoom. I'll be on it in a couple minutes here. But today is our Tuesday, August 11th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. It's a work session. And first up on our agenda, we have a presentation about the Mountain Voices Project Housing Relief Fund. And Nan Sundin, I'll hand it over to you, and then you can introduce all of our guests from Mountain Voices Project. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Nan Sundin. I'm the Human Services Director for Pitkin. And I'm pleased to be able to turn the meeting over to Mountain Voices in a second. They have a innovative plan to try to support and basically to try to prevent evictions, and I'll let them talk about that. I think Commissioner Childs and Curry and I have been meeting with Mountain Voices for the last couple of months around this proposal. We've provided some ideas. It is a regional proposal, so they're looking to get support from Garfield, Eagle, and Pitkin, as well as the Community Foundation. The first ask is for $50,000, but they're looking for a targeted amount of $250,000. So I'm hoping in their presentation, as they talk about their plan, they'll talk about what would be the triggers to ask for or release more funds if we had them available. And I think the other thing, if I could ask for them to talk about the primary population, the demographics of who they're serving. Are we talking about undocumented, documented, parachute and rifle, all the way up to Aspen? What is it that you all are considering? Because that makes a difference in terms of what funding might be available. And just the last piece is, since we started meeting, more funds have become available through CARES Act dollars, COVID Relief CARES Act dollars. So, and my understanding from the Department of Human Services, my representative there, is that the Emergency Housing Assistance Fund and the Property Owner Preservation Fund, POP, PHAP, is accessible to people whether they're lawfully present or not. So the hope would be that if we are able to institute the Mountain Voices Project, it's one tool in the toolbox, and that we would use other resources before we would use local resources, just as Pitkin County used federal and state resources for economic relief before we used local resources. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay. All right, and thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Nan.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, am I going to be interpreting? So if I am, I need some time.
So we do have a bilingual presentation for you today. However, that bilingual part will not come in until we do our stories, Teresa. So we don't need you to interpret until that point. So Teresa will be interpreting Spanish to English so that everybody in the room understands the Spanish part, but our Spanish-speaking friends will listen carefully. We are going to introduce Mountain Voices Project in a minute when we start the slideshow, and please bear with us. Many of us, this is our first time doing a presentation at this level, so if we need a minute to get slides and share screens, thank you for your patience. I'm Lindsay LaFaro. I'm the director of the Buddy Program, and the Buddy Program is a member institution of Mountain Voices Project, and you're going to hear more about how Mountain Voices Project is structured. But I'd like to introduce my colleagues on the call today and start with Alice Steindler.
My name is Alice Steindler, and I'm the local community organizer with Mountain Voices Project.
Great. Berta?
Hi, my name is Berta Lopez. I am a member of Madres in Action, a group Madres and Rifle, and Madres in Action is member MVP.
John?
Hi, I'm John Fox Rubin, and I am a community leader through both Mountain Family Health Centers, which is a member of Mountain Voices, and from the Aspen Jewish Congregation, which is also a member of Mountain Voices Project.
Ellen?
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Dubé, and I'm a member of Snowmass Chapel, a member of MVP.
Thank you. And Esmeralda?
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Esmeralda y yo trabajo para un grupo comunitario en Parashut y Barmen Mesa que se llama Grand Valley Residency.
Teresa, could you translate that?
Hello, my name is Esmeralda, and I work for a community group, and it's in Parashut, and the name is Grand Valley Resident Group.
Great. Teresa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, I'm Teresa Lopez, and I live in Denver. Sorry about the fires that you have going on up there.
Great. And Charla.
Hi, I'm Charla Belinsky, and I'm the associate pastor at Snowmass Chapel, and we are also a founding member of Mountain Voices Project.
Great. So at this point, we are going to, I think Alice is going to share her screen so we can get our slides up.
I will, but let's make sure that we introduce Nancy y Berta también.
Oh, lo siento. Berta went. I don't see Nancy. Oh, lo siento. Nancy, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Nancy Hurtado. I'm the Madres in Action and with MVP2. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I am going to start sharing my screen now. And we're going to present. Okay, so again, thanks so much for your time this afternoon, and just a quick moment to think about the fires, just to make our already complex situation a little bit more trying. But we're in this together. So again, thank you for your time. I'm going to give a very brief overview of what MVP is. And then, you know, as you guys mull this stuff over and get to know or hear about us more, if you're interested to have a conversation on the side, I'd love to have a cup of coffee over Zoom or, you know, at a 6 feet distance at some point soon. Oops, how do I switch screens? Okay, there we go. One thing that Mountain Voices Project is very dedicated to is identifying what groups within our region have in common. We call this our common interests, okay? And it's clear that Pitkin County and the work that you guys do really relative to forward thinking for future generations aligns to the Mountain Voices intention of really creating social change that's enduring. Mountain Voices Project is what we call a broad-based organization. We are a nonprofit. Mountain Voices Project was incubated by, many of us know the Manaus Fund. And that fund over the years did quite a few experiments, some of them culminating in things like Valley Settlement or the Third Street Center. But what they have most recently really been working on or what they wanted to fulfill was the desire to bring real community-based organizing to this area. And Mountain Voices Project is now independent of Manaus, who does continue to be an institutional member. And the purpose is really to bring institutions together throughout our region who are what we call mediating institutions, schools, churches, neighborhood groups, nonprofits. And the idea is that we identify common interests and we work with partners within our region to see those interests through to fruition. Currently, MVP consists of 28 or 29 institutional members. We are all dues paying members. That's how we support ourselves and the work that we do. As I mentioned, the Manaus Fund began really bringing these ideas to leaders within the Roaring Fork Valley all the way west to Parachute as early as 2013. And by 2019, we officially incorporated with, I think it's 26 members. By the end of 2020, ahead of COVID, our leaders had worked very hard, listening intentionally, to identify what our action would be around. And we came up with childcare, equitable access to health care, aging in community, and our common concerns around the quarry expansion in Glenwood Springs. Since COVID, our immediate efforts have, they've become much more specific, as I'm sure you folks can relate. As soon as COVID hit, we started listening deeply using our basic organizing principles of having house meetings and relational conversations to really understand what households were experiencing in the face of COVID, particularly around their economics. And what you'll hear today are some stories that illustrate those things, as well as a plan to help us battle some of those stresses. So since COVID, MVP leaders have been working to listen and to inform themselves as they have built this plan, and we bring it to you today for consideration. And with that, unless, Lindsay, you think there's something giant about MVP that I have missed, I think I'll turn it over to you and Berta.
Great. We are happy to take questions. I think if you all prefer, we can do that at the end of the presentation. But stop me if the commissioners have anything.
Lindsay, I'll keep my eye on the screen, and if a commissioner wants to talk, they'll get my attention, and then I'll just cut in. Right now, there's no questions.
Okay. Great. So I know Nan asked at the beginning that we just really convey what our target demographic is, and so I just want to make that clear right now, that we are looking to help individuals, families, undocumented, documented, from Aspen to Parachute. We are not limiting our resources to one population or another, and as you'll hear through this presentation, not only does it work closely with tenants, but also with landlords. And so we're interested in using the existing relationships that many of our partners have to help those in need in our community. Berta?
Okay. We have seen unemployment number vary throughout the valley and within the different counties, impacting many our friends, families, neighbors. We also know many individuals in our communities do not qualify for unemployment due to documentation status. Their numbers are not reflected here.
We also know that the majority of Pickens County's workforce comes from outside of Pickens County. And as I mentioned, this is a regional effort. You can go to the next slide, Alice. And we also know that our community has been amazingly generous to try and help the most vulnerable in our community during this difficult time. And we still know there's a lot of uncertainty as we move into the fall and what has typically been an off season for our community.
we would like to introduce some persons to talk about their experience in landlord experience from the tenants and landlords perspective. And I would like to start with my own story. I'm going to share just a little about my family. I would like to speak in Spanish because I feel more comfortable. My husband and I, we emigrated. Oh my God. My husband and I, perdón.
¿Verdad?
Yeah. Mi esposo y yo.
Español es no problema. Este es porque este está con nosotros, ¿ok?
Yeah. Mi esposo y yo emigramos a los Estados Unidos hace 20 años. Mi esposo trabaja muchísimo, hasta 2 trabajos, 3 trabajos, lo que sea, lo que encuentre, con tal de que yo me quede en casa cuidando a nuestros 5 hijos. Nuestro presupuesto antes de COVID, los gastos de la casa se llevaban un 20% y nuestros gastos totales se llevaban un 91%. Al final del mes nos quedaba 9% para ahorros. Después de COVID, nuestros gastos de la casa se llevan un 26%. Nuestros gastos totales se llevan 5% más del presupuesto que tenemos ahora. Uno de los trabajos de mi esposo se vio afectado con COVID y por eso estamos en esta situación, en esta crisis. Lo más horrible, lo más triste, lo más vergonzoso es tener que escoger entre cuál bill voy a pagar o lo peor, pagar un carro en lugar de comprar comida suficiente o comida fresca. La vergüenza de tener que ir a pedir a Lyft comida por pagar un carro. Esa es nuestra situación en este momento. Teresa?
Yes, hello. So I would like to share a little bit about my history. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to share about my family history. My husband and I immigrated here about 20 years ago, and my husband works really, really, really hard. He actually has 2 to 3 jobs at the same time so that I can stay home raising our 5 children. Before COVID, our situation was that the housing costs that we had, they were about 20% of our budget. Our total expenses were about 91%, and we had only 9% left for savings. But our current situation now since COVID, and because my husband has also lost one of his jobs and our budget has gotten affected, now our income is, our housing costs take 26% of our income, and then we have only left 9% by the end of the month for savings. That was before COVID, but now we only have 5% left, which is not so much from our budget. My husband, one of his jobs got very affected by COVID, by all the situation. And the part that is very sad, I could even say that it's shameful and it's very embarrassing for me, is to try to decide which bill am I going to pay. Are we going to pay for this bill? Are we going to pay for the car payments? Are we going to pay for food? Are we going to buy healthy food? And this is very, very, very an embarrassing situation. So it's embarrassing for me to go ask for money for assistance.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Gracias, Berta, también. Commissioners and everyone, as you can see, we have examples. This is actually Berta's example of her household budget. Berta, are you, Termina, ¿sí? Entonces, por Nancy.
Okay, Nancy va a compartir con nosotros algo sobre su historia.
Nancy's going to share with us part of her story as well.
Buenas tardes. Como dije, mi nombre es Nancy Hurtado. Mi historia es muy común, ya que es muy similar a muchas historias hispanas. Antes del COVID-19 trabajábamos duro, se podía decir que teníamos buenos ingresos. Mi esposo es instalador de azulejos, yo soy asistente de maestra. Era común que en el verano había mucho trabajo, así que pues trabajábamos duro lo más que podíamos para cubrir nuestros gastos y ahorrar para el invierno cuando hay poco trabajo. Regularmente pasa pues esto en construcción. Después del COVID-19 nuestros ingresos cayeron mucho, casi a la mitad. ¿Sí me escuchan? Y sí, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Ok, lo siento. Que ellos cayeron casi a la mitad y estamos preocupados porque los ahorros que teníamos pues no serán suficientes para cubrir nuestras necesidades ahora en este invierno. Pues no durarán por mucho tiempo, creo. Esto es pues un gran estrés para nosotros, porque además de nuestros gastos personales o gastos mensuales que teníamos, tenemos deudas que hemos adquirido antes, pensando que tendríamos suficiente para cubrirlas. Y la verdad que está siendo bastante estresante. Tenemos niños en la escuela y nos dicen en la escuela que pidamos ayuda para poder solventar nuestros gastos, pero la verdad que nos da pena hacerlo, pedir, sobre todo nos da como preocupación porque no queremos como compartir nuestra información personal, ya que como muchos hispanos aquí en este país, pues no tenemos la documentación adecuada. Siento que el COVID nos ha cambiado demasiado nuestras vidas, porque ahorrar cuando es posible era normal para nosotros. Pero pues pues como algunas partes del año que no teníamos trabajo y eso, podíamos tener para solventarlo. Ahora lo que nos asusta a mi esposo y a mí es que con el COVID no sabemos cuándo volverá el trabajo a normalizarse. Realmente pues necesito ser realista al respecto, pero la verdad que esto es como muy estresante para nosotros. Les agradezco mucho por escuchar mi historia.
Thank you so much for listening to my story. As I told you before, my name is Nancy Hurtado. I consider my story a very common story since it is very similar to what many Hispanic families are going through. Before COVID, we worked hard. It could be said that we had a good income. My husband is a tile installer and I'm a teacher's aide. It was common that during the summer, there was a lot of work. So we worked hard to cover our expenses and save for the winter when work is low. After COVID, our income fell a lot, almost in half. And we are worried because the savings that we have will not be enough to cover our basic needs for long. So that's what I think. So this is a stress for us because in addition to our monthly expenses, we have debts that we have acquired before, thinking that we would have enough money to cover them all. Then again, this is a very stressful situation. We have children in school and the school tells us to ask for help, but we are ashamed to ask for help. Above all, we fear to give our personal information since like many Hispanics, we don't have the appropriate documentation. Sometimes I feel like COVID has not changed our lives too much because saving when it is possible, it was normal for us because during some parts of the year, there is less work, but we were able to save before, not anymore. What's scary to me and my husband now is that with COVID, we don't know when the work will come back. And I need to be realistic about this. And thank you for listening to my story.
Esmeralda, ¿usted está lista?
Yeah. Thank you, Teresa. And I just leave Esmeralda speak her story or her things that she has. Thank you so much.
Mi nombre es Esmeralda. Yo trabajo para el grupo comunitario de Grand Valley que está en Parachute y Valle Mesa. Es un grupo de residentes dedicado a fomentar la equidad en salud de nuestra región. Voy a ir traduciendo por partes, Teresa, para que no sea tan largo.
Okay, she's going to be cutting this in chunks so that it doesn't get too long. So hello, my name is Esmeralda and I work in Grand Valley. I work for a community group. It's a residential team here.
Un grupo de residentes dedicado a fomentar la equidad de salud en nuestra región.
It is a group of residents dedicated to building health equity here in our region.
Durante varios años viviendo y trabajando en Parachute, he construido relaciones con miembros de la comunidad, lo que me permite conocer detalles de su vida laboral y familiar.
And during several years of living and working here in Parachute, I have built relationships with members of the community, which has allowed me to know details of the work and family life.
Desde COVID, hemos creado un grupo de enfoque para investigar más acerca de cómo están las familias de bajos ingresos en la comunidad, cómo están ellos experimentando esta situación.
Since COVID, we have built a focus group to investigate how low-income families in the community are experiencing this situation.
En las entrevistas con este grupo, hemos escuchado 3 temas comunes que les preocupan.
In interviews with this group, I have been able to hear 3 common issues that concern them.
El primero de ellos es el ingreso por la pérdida de empleos o la reducción de la jornada de trabajo.
The first one has to do with income loss due to loss of employment or reduction in working hours.
El segundo asunto es la salud.
The second one has to do with health.
Porque si no se encuentran saludables, ellos no van a poder trabajar bien, o si están en contacto con alguien que pudiera transmitirles el virus.
If they are not well or they live with someone who is at risk, they're scared of getting the virus.
Esto va a impactar seriamente su economía.
And of course, this will impact very the economy.
En tercer lugar, está el asunto de enviar a los niños a la escuela.
Then the third point is this issue about sending our children back to school.
Ellos consideran que es un riesgo para su salud, pero también tenerlos en casa es muy costoso.
They also consider that this is a health risk, but also having them at home is more expensive.
Esos problemas van de la mano. Cuando los niños no asisten a la escuela, las familias tienen que gastar más dinero en comida.
And then this, of course, these issues go hand in hand when children not attend school, and then families have to spend more money on food.
Y en estos momentos las familias se tienen que decidir entre pagar facturas o poner comida en la mesa.
And this is a time for families when they are simply trying to decide which bills they're going to pay or if they're going to bring food to the table.
Una de las varias historias que yo he escuchado es el de la señora María.
One of the several stories that I've heard is the one from Mrs. María.
Ella no pudo estar hoy aquí porque la llamaron para trabajar y en estos momentos una llamada para que vaya a trabajar no es común.
She's not here with us today because she did get a call to go to work, and of course nowadays for us getting a phone call to go to work is not something that's common.
La señora María es una madre soltera, mayor de 55 años, que vive sola.
Mrs. María, she's a single mother over 55 years old and she lives alone.
Tiene un único hijo que está sirviendo al ejército desde hace aproximadamente 2 años.
She has a son who is in the army. He's been serving there for about 2 years.
Él la visita cada vez que puede.
and he visits her when he can.
Su hijo aún no gana lo suficiente para poderle ayudar con sus gastos poder ayudar con sus gastos a su mamá.
So he doesn't earn enough money yet to help his mother.
La situación financiera de María es muy difícil.
Maria's financial situation is very difficult.
Antes de COVID, ella tenía 3 empleos.
Before COVID, she had up to 3 jobs.
Ella trabajaba en un restaurante, limpiaba casas y vendía tamales.
She used to work at a restaurant, she cleaned houses, and she sold tamales.
Actualmente únicamente trabaja en el restaurante y de medio tiempo.
Nowadays, she only works in the restaurant and she only works part-time.
Como ella no tiene niños menores viviendo con ella no puede solicitar muchas de las ayudas que pueden solicitar otras personas.
Since she doesn't have minor children living in the house, she can't really apply for many of the assistance programs that are available.
La señora María tiene enfermedades que tiene que atender y tiene que comprar medicamentos.
She is sick and she has to take care of those needs and she has to buy medicines for that.
Eso significa tener gastos.
And that means that she has to have expenses on that.
En su situación actual, ella tiene que tomar una decisión.
In her current situation, she has to make a decision.
La decisión que tomó María fue cancelar sus consultas médicas para tener dinero suficiente para pagar su alquiler.
Her decision was to cancel all her medical appointments so that she could have enough money to pay for her rent.
Este es uno de los muchos casos que yo he escuchado, pero que definitivamente me han impactado.
This is one of the many cases that I've heard, but it has definitely impacted me.
Esta semana, como grupo de enfoque, hemos aprendido acerca de hacer nuestros presupuestos.
So this week, as a focus group, we have learned how to prepare our budgets.
Que puedan ver el comportamiento de sus ingresos y sus gastos.
So that we can learn about the pattern of our income and expenses.
¿Qué gasto es el que impacta más a sus familias?
Which is the expense that causes the greatest impact on your families.
También nos dimos cuenta que muchas de las personas que viven en Parachute y Barham en Mesa trabajan en el condado de Pitkin.
We also realized that many people who live here in Parachute and Mesa, they live in Pitkin County.
Y si viven aquí es porque el alquiler es más barato.
And if they live here, it's because the rent is cheaper.
Nuestras familias están acostumbradas a trabajar duro y ahorrar dinero.
Our families are used to working hard and saving money.
Para los tiempos difíciles o el invierno.
You know, this is for our difficult times and also for when winter comes.
Pero en estos momentos ellos no están encontrando la luz y necesitan ayuda para llegar a fin de mes.
But right now, they are not finding the light and they need help to be able to make ends meet by the end of the month.
No estamos buscando sacarnos la lotería, sino estamos buscando tener una mano amiga que nos ayude en estos momentos.
We're not looking at winning the lottery, but we're just looking for a friendly helping hand to allow us to advance.
Gracias por escucharnos, gracias por estar aquí, por permitirnos estar aquí. Nos gustaría que pudieran venir en alguna ocasión a Parachute de Barham en Mesa y conocer a nuestra gente, a este equipo de enfoque con el que estamos trabajando.
Thank you for being here with us, for allowing us to be here present, and we would love for you to come to see us one of these days. And we are working hard with our focus group, and hopefully we can see you one of these days.
Just a quick note on this presentation. These budget examples, there's 8 here. A few we shared pretty specifically with a story. We're happy to send these on to you. Because this group of ladies out of Parachute and Rifle just learned Google Sheets last week, we couldn't get them into your original packet, but we'll share them afterwards.
We also reached out to several tenants in Pitkin County who also had work conflicts today or were a little hesitant to share their story in our smaller community here. it was somewhat enlightening to me to speak to several tenants who are living in somewhat tenuous situations with roommates that may or may not be allowed, and they just weren't comfortable sharing those stories. It just illuminates, again, the issues and considerations to take into account of all of our Valley members and what the housing situations are like. We also reached out to the landlords at Centennial, Maroon Creek Apartments, and the Meyerstein Trust to try and get one of them to speak today. We spoke to several people in the management positions at those properties, and the landlords were not able to reply to us. Many of the management firms are interested in how this fund plays out and how they can access it, and we'll tell you a little bit more about what that will look like. So we're staying in touch with them as well, and sorry that we don't have them on the line, but John Fox Rubin has some feedback from a landlord in Eagle County.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So most of you probably have heard of Crawford Mobile Home Park. It's managed by Robert Hubble, a longtime Valley native, on behalf of their family that manages the park. And they're very proud of how they've managed it, how much of a community they've created there. And I've been part of that community at Valley Settlement. We helped build a playground there with them and a public build a couple years ago with about 250 volunteers. And so when we've been putting this plan together, we've really been cognizant of, what would help landlords. And he would like to speak today, but he's actually double booked right now, so he wasn't able to join us. And he has also looked at the new POP program out of the Department of Local Affairs and thinks it has some merits, but it's not a cure-all either. And so what he likes about this plan is for tenants that are really struggling, that are falling behind, that may get, more economic dislocation going forward, he would certainly explore this landlord-tenant fund that you're about to learn more about. And they have around 350 units in their mobile home park. They own some of the units themselves and rent directly, but mostly they rent out the pads, just like many of the budget examples you saw. So when you look at the total cost of housing, what's interesting is lots of people do own their mobile home within a park, and that keeps their expenses very low because all they're really paying is the land rent. So families that have been here a long time are very stable, except in conditions like this that we're seeing. And so that was one of his points, is that, boy, they'll really do almost anything they can to keep their tenants in the mobile home park, and they think that this plan is part of the solution for the whole region. Thank you, Lindsay.
And thank you, John. This is Ellen Dubé, and we have, I think we're all at a point of hearing important stories, and that's really what MVP's been doing for the last 5 months since, in a different way than we had before because of COVID. And this slide shows you all the players that we've been listening to, all the participants, and realized from hearing from more tenants and landlords and also lenders, we came up with something that's a regional solution or idea for a shared solution. And my job right now with this slide and the next is to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts on how it works. So you can see for yourselves, we have 2 different sources of funds we're seeking to develop a shared regional solution. It's not really an MVP project itself. It's something we're facilitating with all of our partners and institutions and asking you to be part of, and hope that it would augment and support the things that you've already been doing that's unprecedented in these last 5 months. So you have the public dollars coupled with private dollars. We have some secured funds that John's going to talk about after these 2 slides. And then to participate in this program, you see the tenants and landlords would be the participants, with nonprofits that would have a couple of different roles. And even a third kind of unique way of approaching how funds are given out. We have a mediating group listed here, and then a fiscal agent. So just kind of absorb this slide for a moment, and then I'll ask you after a few moments to advance the slide to the next one. Okay, so if we can advance it, we can always come back if there are questions about the diagram. So the nuts and bolts are it's a shared solution, not only regionally, but within the people that it's assisting, the tenants, the landlords. And it would have a role for the tenant to be able to pay at least 1/3 of their rent, but again, giving a relief of the other 2/3. And the landlord would actually give up 1/3 of the rent, but then receive the benefit of getting some 2/3 of the rent that would be paid for by 1/3 from the tenant and another 1/3 from this fund that we're asking you to contribute to, with other county governments and other nonprofit private funds, individual contributions. So really you can see the benefit here is it's leveraging our dollars, leveraging the fund by a factor of 3. These funds that we're asking you for would be funneled through a fiscal agent that is a really neat fit that we've found and built a relationship now through Garfield County Housing Authority. They have a foundation called Uncle Bob Foundation, and really their mission is matching where we are right now in this economic insecurity. So that's really a comprehensive group that can take a lot of other institutions across the region and provide them with these funds for the rent relief. Now we use 2 other terms here: vetting groups, vetting agencies. They're the groups that would actually and are already in the place of giving out assistance funds. They would continue to do their case management as they have been doing, and that's something that MVP really prioritizes, is that case management helps build the relationship with the tenant that is seeking funds or the landlord that's volunteering to participate in this fund. Right now we have committed 3 committed groups: Roaring Fork School Districts, this name, just a second. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Alice.
Family Resource Centers of
Roaring Fork School District and of Parachute 16. So both of those family resource centers and the Valley Settlement Project are the 3 institutions at this point that would be overseeing their case management with people needing assistance. And they would also be contributing or giving out the funds that would be distributed to them through a fiscal agent, Uncle Bob. Now, we have a lot of other institutions that are also interested in connecting. Just 2 more points on this slide. And those other institutions would refer to the vetting groups. They might not be in the same position to be giving assistance dollars, because that's not always their role. A group like Stepping Stones or Youth Zone, who are more into other types of social services assistance, but they would know of who's in need, and they could be an important communication link into the assistance. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, we also have another piece of mediation with Alpine Legal Services. And in our packet, we wrote some more details. At this point, they're $30,000 with Alpine Legal Services that would assist with mediation between the tenant and the landlord to come to these agreements of committing to 1/3 of the rent funds for 3 months and reducing the rent if that's what the landlord can commit to. In these, we would have paralegals through Alpine Legal Services to provide this communication and connect those two parties into a stronger position with one another. So now I'll ask John to continue to talk about the specifics of our funding request. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Alan, and thanks everyone for your patience as we go through so much information. I'll try to be brief so we can have a good conversation. The short story is we're trying to reach a total amount of up to $1 million. However, we have to be completely honest that we don't know how many landlord-tenant pairs will take advantage of this opportunity between Parachute and Aspen. So we've structured it as 5 separate tranches of funding. And so we were awarded $100,000 from the Rescue Fund at Aspen Community Foundation, and we agreed that what we should do is just do it in $20,000 increments. And the goal is to match and leverage their $20,000 with funding from Garfield County, Pitkin County, Eagle County, and perhaps a few others. The city of Aspen has a few of them have been briefed on this, and they may play a role as well. So the thought is that each entity could pay what is a reasonable amount for that first tranche. And so we're asking, and we know you can't make a decision today, but we're asking you to consider $50,000 as a first tranche, and that would be your only real commitment, and that we would come back to you after we've spent the first tranche with data saying, where are the people coming from? You know, if they're all in Garfield County and we don't get any participation from Pitkin County, well, maybe Garfield puts in their second tranche and Pitkin puts in less. I think we're trying to be flexible. One of the things that you all, I'm sure, are very aware of is that Garfield County and Pitkin County, Eagle County do a lot of great work together, but oftentimes the politicos don't there's a lot of finger pointing, I guess I would say, and we experienced that when we first went to Garfield County. You'll see that we requested $500,000 initially from them without this tranche system, and they gave us 2 conditions. One, Pitkin County has to participate because they're part of this. You know, if you're going to have a regional solution, you've got to have Pitkin County. So you can probably guess who said that. And then they also wanted us to really work with some of the other housing nonprofits that have been doing relief aid that are not Mountain Voices Project organizations. And so we've been, marching towards those 2 goals, and that's partly why we're here today. But honestly, I think you can really help us leverage additional funding from Garfield County and from Eagle County. We are meeting with Eagle County later today in a work session just like this. And when you look at these numbers, the total amount from Eagle County is approximately the percentage of the people that live in this region, and the total amount from Pitkin County is approximate percentage of the people that live in the Parachute to Aspen region. And the amount from Garfield County is proportional to that number of people. So that's approximately where those 500,000, 250, and 150,000 numbers come from. I think that's all I want to say because I know you probably have a lot of questions. And I'm hoping that I answered Nan's question about, when additional requests would come back and what commitment we're asking. If you readily had $250,000 in a line item and you wanted to commit it, we wouldn't say no, but we totally understand where you're at right now. And we don't know how quickly we will spend this money. It could be the end of the year before we come back, or we could come back to you in a month. And so we just want to be honest that we're not forcing you to commit yourselves at this point, but we would love, maybe at your next public meeting, to consider that first 50K tranche. Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Lindsay,
you.
we should probably go to questions from the commissioners now.
Please.
So looking for hands to raise. Greg, go ahead.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for the really great presentation. And I'm grateful that we had participation from Latinos who presented about their situations and the situations in their community. That's very powerful and useful. I have a lot of questions, and I'm sure everyone else does too. The first one, I just wanted to ask, we've always had a boom and bust economy, certainly in the upper part in Pitkin County with off seasons. And I'm just wondering, and we can talk about this another time, but how are we separating the COVID situation from what was our baseline boom bust twice a year off season economy? And I know people were prepared for the off seasons. This is different, and I understand that, and I appreciate it. But I did want to look at some of the stats at some point and get an understanding of, how do we interpret this given our economy? And if I could, I guess my biggest question is going to be for our own staff is that, given these requests for funding, what are the projections going forward? How long do we think we can sustain contributing to this? Because we don't know. This is open-ended right now. So I don't know how long this is going to go on. And when we began our relief funding early in the COVID-19 crisis, that was still the question then, how long can we afford to do this? So I just want to make sure we know where we think it's going and what are we going to do when the money runs out again, for instance. So those are the two questions. If you could, maybe just the first one, how do we interpret this data compared to the typical boom-bust off-season situation that our employees face?
I think that's a really good question and a really good point, Greg. And I don't have numbers in front of me for what unemployment looked like pre-COVID, but I know it was among the lowest in the state for Pitkin County. And I believe, and maybe Nan could chime in here, that doesn't take into account off-season numbers, right? That's just an annual number. What I do think that the stories we had today highlighted was the inability to continue to save for the off season because of COVID and the lack of the safety net that individual households have due to being forced to make decisions about spending right now to sustain a household versus spending what we need and putting the rest aside for those off seasons. So that's just one thing I would lift up here around the off season numbers.
Okay, George? You're muted, George.
Hi, I just wondered, did you say that Pitkin County, when did you say they had the lowest unemployment? Because the reports that we just received recently was Pitkin County, based on COVID, now has probably one of the highest unemployment of any county in the state.
It was last year.
Yeah, I believe that it was in 2019, pre-COVID, that the county was looking at fairly low unemployment rates.
Yeah, right. So right now,
you realize that's changed. It's totally on its head now.
Right. So compared to Garfield County, Pitkin County has probably one of the highest unemployment rates in the state due to the nature of our industry. I just want to clarify that. And I guess a question for Nan, perhaps, is we know that there's a tremendous need throughout the entire region, but we also know there's a tremendous need right here in Pitkin County, whether it's food security or housing or medical. And we, as well as our partners, Snowmass, City of Aspen, and Community Foundation and some private donors have stepped up to really address that. So my question, my concern is knowing how strong our employment is in Pitkin County, and depending on what the ski season looks like, it's probably not going to bounce back very strongly in the next coming months. What are our needs are going to be in terms of just trying to meet and address our Pitkin County residents? And I understand in the workforce that does commute. I mean, you noted in your presentation that we import about 60% of our workforce from outside the county. You should also be noted that Glenwood Springs also imports about 60% of their workforce from outside of their municipality, all coming from Western Garfield County. So those are my concerns, as well as sort of, as Greg said, you know, at what point are our reserves going to be impacted so much that it's going to start affecting our ability to provide our basic services to our residents?
I think that's a question, but I'm not sure how to answer it. We are.
There are a lot of questions in there, but mainly those are mainly my concerns and issues.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, you know, to keep in mind, we're going to need a lot of strategies. There isn't going to be one strategy that's going to be the best strategy. I think that MVP has one strategy. And as I said, there are CARES Act dollars that are available for tenant relief right now. We should be maximizing all of that first. And there's local dollars going for rent relief through the Aspen Community Foundation. And there are probably more solutions that are going to come up. There was just a webinar this morning on the projection of the potential evictions that are coming our way. It's going to be a wave, just like we experienced in April. So I think we're going to need a multi-tiered strategic approach, and this is one of the tools we could use.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, Nan, that being said, we agree that we need to have all the tools we can find to put in the toolbox, but funding all of those tools is the board is really, it's one of my big concerns, because we have so many asks coming in, and as you know, I'm very protective of our reserve funds, because look what's happening in Garfield County right now with the fires, and that may tap us again. We have to look at the broader picture outside of COVID, just running our public entity and looking at the issues that are coming before us now with the wildfire crisis. So that's one of my points. The other point is I'm also concerned about owners with mortgages. I think it's one thing if you're a tenant and you're renting, but we're hearing from people who have mortgages and they're having to defer mortgage payments or refinance them in the future, and that's going to be a big hit. So we have to take that into consideration if we're concerned about keeping people in their homes. My other point too is undocumented funds. I know everybody's talking about it. How do we can't, there's certain county public monies that can't be used. So we need to be sure of how we're carefully dispersing those funds for use. I know we've got some private funds coming in, but I have a feeling that there are a great many people who are in need of these monies that aren't completely documented, and so we have to be careful with that. So that's another issue I have. And then what came up, I love the stories. I know it's hard for people to come forward and it's difficult, but I really appreciate them. But we've heard about Nan with people using any of our opportunities for food or health care. They're concerned, they're embarrassed, they're concerned about their privacy issues with their family information. So how do we encourage people who really need these monies to come forward and let them know that this is a safe avenue for them? So those are issues I have, and we're already over our time, but I think we still need to continue on with this conversation. At this point, I think we need to look at some source of funding just to get this ball rolling and see what the need is and what we can provide. And then we'll have to look at some future funding opportunities if we need to increase the ante as we move forward.
Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all again, and I'm glad to have you present before the whole board. I just have some specific things sort of related to what Nan brought up in the beginning as far as some criteria, I guess, around how, this and future tranches of money would be justified. And so I just have some specifics on how the program is planned to be organized. So with regards to the documented or the undocumented question, is there any requirement around the landlords, receiving the money? That's one question. Also related to landlords, do they have a residency requirement? would be that money in this program go towards landlords who are part of the community, as opposed to landlords who are based in other parts of Colorado or other states, as sort of one way to I think, focus where it would go. And then is there any AMI cap to the request? And I just asked that because I noticed that some of the other programs, you know, that are available have some AMI structure around them. And so it just also may be one of those levers to say, okay, if we identify those AMIs, then we know we can send them to that point of service, and AMIs outside of that can go to, you know, requests from this fund. So just something to think about as well.
John, go ahead, John.
I'll try to be brief because I know we don't have a ton of time. Under this plan, all the money gets paid just to the landlords, so there's no looking at documentation status of their tenants. There is no residency requirement envisioned at this point for the landlords. All the ones that we've been talking to are predominantly smaller landlords in the community that we think would take advantage of this. I think the bigger corporate ones, to be determined, and those are some of the ones Lindsay's trying to talk to in Pickens County. And we don't have an AMI cap, but we do have a maximum dollar amount that could be used. And the way the program is envisioned is that it would cover 1/3 of back rent due. So if someone's behind right now, this fund would help them cover. They have to figure out how to cover 1/3. The fund covers 1/3. And if they can cover more than 1/3, the landlord doesn't have to forego 1/3. And then it would cover for 3 months going forward. So someone who has $1,000 a month rent, they would they'd be eligible for up to $1,333 out of this fund, and it would give them and their landlord 3 months to kind of get back on their feet. So we're not envisioning it as a month-to-month thing. We're really envisioning it to help people get, you know, this, let's say the people that are high risk of eviction that we know, you know, the moratorium ended July 25th, and so we're going to be seeing near the end of this month how big of an impact that is. And that's why we want to get started and be ready to help landlord and tenant teams really work. So we think the biggest filter is that the landlord has to make a financial concession. And that's where, when we look at other relief programs, what's beautiful about this is it does leverage the funds by that factor of 3, you know, because the tenant is figuring out how to put in something, the landlord is giving up something, and then the public and private funders of this fund are meeting in the middle there. So I hope that addresses your questions. Thank you.
Okay, George?
Yeah, one other thing, thanks, John, for that. It just raised another question for me, and that is, and I'm supportive in terms of trying to jumpstart this with some funds. I don't know the exact amount. But I would really, as you mentioned earlier, looking at the second tranche, even before that, have a little more accountability in terms of these pots of money coming from the different public governments. So, for example, if per your request, if PITCO puts in $50,000 for the first phase, I would like to ensure that those dollars are getting utilized by Pickens County residents, and likewise for Garfield County, for Eagle County, versus moving any of the government entities into another government jurisdiction first. I think the concept in terms of building a coalition is great, and piggybacking and supporting, leveraging from community organizations such as all of yours, as well as the Community Foundation. But again, my concern, and it would be, I want to make sure that our dollars, first in, first out, are going to Pickens County residents versus bleeding them out down Valley. And I'm sure the other counties would feel similar. So some sort of accounting, even for the first phase, I would like to ensure that that's happening.
Steve, real quick.
Okay, go ahead, Patty.
Yeah, as far as evictions, just this morning, the governor extended the eviction issue. I don't know how it applies to all of this, but it was extended to prevent evictions of Coloradans economically harmed by COVID, and it was just, we just got a notice this morning at 8:30.
Yeah, that's the moratorium on the evictions. It was extended, I think, for one more month, so it'd be towards the end of August at this point. Greg?
Yeah, thanks. Maybe John or Lindsay. I'm not sure who I'm asking this to. Regarding the mediating agents, the fiscal agents, Uncle Bob Foundation, Alpine Valley Services, are we assuming that these are all gratis? These services raise their own nonprofit funding, and we're not paying them through this fund for their services. Is that correct? That's the first question. Correct. Okay, I got a thumbs up on that one.
Yeah, it's more correct. There is a small amount of money that is allocated to the vetting institutions. They're going to be allowed to keep 10% of the funds they receive for their own administrative burden.
Okay, so we will have some administrative costs.
Yeah, and Uncle Bob is donating their time, but they're asking for the very minor out-of-pocket expenses for setting up the accounts to be funded.
Got it. The other question I had is, speaking to some private donors, I know they're not really interested in supplementing government funding for landlord payments to landlords. I know some people have a philosophical issue with that, but they are interested in food security. So I wanted to ask, is this program integrating with Lift Up's food security programs? And are there ways that we can reduce people's expenses, or at least get them transportation through a bus system ticket, or food security options through Lift Up, through the pantries, or Mountain Family Health programs, so that their expenses are reduced if cash isn't flowing? Is there some other way? Because while we're having this conversation, I'm thinking back to the conversations I've had just with private funding about, how do we free up some of that to match what we're going to try to do?
There's nothing baked into this plan right now, Greg, that has to do with food security. And I know that the member institutions of MVP and other nonprofits, and this speaks a little bit to Patty's question about people coming forward and asking for help, is that many of the nonprofits have relationships with the clients that we serve. And so those are trusted relationships. And I see at the Buddy program, many of our families come to us and say, I need help with rent. Where do I go? And they trust us to tell them, this is an okay person to go talk to. You're safe, it's confidential, whatever that looks like. And in the meantime, what are your other needs? We're asking, because you should be going to the food pantry on Wednesday to make sure to lower your grocery bill. And how do we get the kids on Medicaid so that you don't have to worry about that? So I think there is a comprehensive approach through many of the nonprofit partners. And Nan and I have been talking a lot about this within Pickens County, how we can help people think about their budget and leveraging everything that's available right now, so that it's not just rent every month, but it's maybe selling a car, maybe, supplementing your grocery bill by going to the food pantry. It's all of the above. And so while this plan doesn't address that exactly, I know a lot of the nonprofit agencies are doing this work together through case management to make sure everybody knows all the different options on the table.
Great, thanks. Yeah, just knowing that there's communication while keeping the confidentiality and trust is important.
Yeah, and I had similar questions kind of about the food issue, also the transportation costs. I noticed on the budgets, one family didn't have anything down for gas. They had zero for gas, but they had one car. So obviously if they're using the car at all, they have some gas cost. If they're not using the car, then they would have a transportation cost, maybe riding RAFTA to get to work. Also on the food on some of the budgets, some of the food costs went up for some families and some went down. And I thought perhaps some family has a garden. They're spending a lot of time in their garden at their house. There are also opportunities like the High Water Farm in Silt that is doing food for low-income families, which is a new operation this summer, but I'm not sure if you're aware of that. It's on the south side of the river by Silt. And
You know,
that would be a good thing to look into.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been lucky with Lift Up's real regional approach with Rocky Mountain Food Pantry and a couple of other partners, real local type of partners, that food security, while we've seen waves of higher need and lower need just in the last few months. More or less, there's a trusted system in place. What we are hearing is that rent is so complex because of so many reasons, which you are very well aware of, that a kind of longevity approach of like figuring out, you know, every month what we hear from families is that how they figure out how to pay their bills is excruciating. Mm-hmm. It's brutal and it's stressful. And so one of the ideas behind this plan is for landlords and tenants to really come together and say, how can we look at 3 months together? How could we get sustainable together, protect what we've created, our relationship, but also make sure that the bills get paid? And that's where a lot of our local landlords, while some of them absolutely have mortgages, and we've heard that loud and clear, and we've been learning a lot about forbearance and the opportunity in that, but also the drawbacks that sometimes come with that. But we also have quite a few local landlords who consider that supplementary income on some level, and they're eagerly asking to be able to do their part with some kind of support.
Okay, and we've really run out of our time here. Just in summary, I mean, I would be generally supportive of trying to do the first 50,000, get the program running, get the other counties to put some money in, and then start getting some landlord-tenant teams put together and see how it works. I realize you're working on budgeting for individual families already, but I would continue that effort because that might be a way, if they can save money in some other aspect, that could stretch the rent money out further.
Steve, I have one
We're getting to our budget season, like we've gone over this before in our previous phone calls, and we have a lot of unknowns in our budget coming up, so beyond, we could probably come up with the 50,000, but beyond that, at this point, coming into our budget season, I have no idea. Patty has another comment.
Yeah, I want to tag on to what you just said, Steve, and I'm going to ask maybe John Peacock, the county manager, if we can at some point at a work session, just look at the cumulative effect of where we're drawing from. It's just like our supplemental budgets. We do them on quarterly, so we see the impact, not just month by month or week by week. So I'd like to have that further conversation. I'm supportive of the seed money, get it going, keep us really tight in the loop. But we also need to, as the county, look at our overall impacts, because we keep drawing at all these different things, and that well goes dry pretty quick, and we need to make sure we still have funds for other issues. So I think we can move this forward. It'll have to come back at a regular meeting with a supplemental, I believe, and where we're going to bring it from.
Okay, Kelly?
Yeah, I'll reiterate that. I think I was going to be a little more narrow in the sense of asking that Nan and John look and see what amount of money might be available and from which fund, and bring that back for a little bit further discussion, along with some points for what we might look at to fund a second round. I think I've offered a few of those, but we haven't had a chance to sort of dialogue as to if those make sense. So that's my suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Greg?
Yeah, I support what I've been hearing from Kelly and from everyone, really, that I think we should go forward this. I'm willing to take a chance on the first 50, but the big question marks about how we go forward after we had some time with our budget season, and I'd like to make sure that the answer has been, or the call has been answered from Garfield County, and that they were waiting for us to be proactive on this. We're going to do this, I think, and I'd support it, and I expect them to, now they've seen us take the lead, they can get in line. Thank you.
Okay. You might enjoy seeing my face more than my mask, but thank you all for being here today. Obviously, we need further discussion on this because we can't appropriate money except in a regular meeting anyhow, and we have to have further discussion. And I think more information coming from John and Nan from the county perspective. And one question that I would love to have Nan and John is, in the money that we paid out, the $3 million from earlier this spring, how much of that went to people who were living in Pickens County versus living in the other counties? I think all of it was people who were working in Pickens County, so we were helping our workers basically, but I've been curious how that money was distributed, and that we might be able to use that kind of as a model for where we would expect this money to go. I mean, I would love, like George, to support the workers in Pickens County who live in Pickens County first, and then as we're able to support people who work in Pickens County, but they live in Eagle or Garfield County. So thank you all for being here today. I think we'll end the discussion now, and we'll look forward to a future meeting with you.
Sorry, just to clarify, all of the COVID relief dollars that we provided from March through June were only for Pickens County residents, lawfully present or not. So we did not extend that money beyond our county limits, just to clarify on this call.
Okay, thanks, Nan. Okay.
Thank you all for your time today. We'll stay in touch.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Nos vemos.
Great seeing you all. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next item, we have our weekly COVID-19 update with John Peacock.
All right, thanks, Steve. And I am going to try and share a screen here. Whoops. Are you all able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
It's small. Maybe you go in present mode. Okay, there you go.
Is that better? Okay. So a few things to visit with you about today. We're going to talk about the new coronameter and mitigation strategies associated with it. That's something that the Board of Health has talked about. I'm going to update you on the state safer at home gradient conversations, CDPHE Protect Our Neighbors Planning Grant, overview of economic indicators, which may not answer some of the questions that you had pursuant to the last conversation, but we'll give you an idea of where some things are going. Then just a little bit of time to follow up on some of the potential action items from the joint meeting with the City Council. So we have a new addition to our website. I'm going to pop out there real quick. This is our coronameter. Hopefully you're still seeing my screen here. And so the coronameter is really designed as a way to take a lot of the stats and measures and put them into a visual that's easier for our community members and businesses and visitors to understand. And right now, we're in cautious. And so what is on our website is you have the current measures that are in place. You have the key indicators that are used to feed into this corona meter, and what our current level is. And so disease spread is one, hospital system capacity is another. You can see our current level is comfortable. Disease control, that's going to be, our measures related to how we're performing on our box it in strategy. Right now, that's cautious. And then for those who want to dig in a little bit deeper, we have the daily indicators and where we're falling on them. So for disease spread, hospital system capacity, and this is actually based on the three measures in our hospital matrix, and then our disease control, how we're doing on our box it in. So for example, we're cautious in terms of how long our PCR positive rate over a 14-day period, and then how long it's taking to turn around testing results. But on our case investigation and contact tracing, right now we're performing well in terms of at least making the contact attempts in a timely manner. And then, concerned about how long it's taking from symptom onset to specimen collection. So then you can go down and this is really turning into a little bit more of an adaptive management process. So what the Board of Health discussed was mitigation strategies then associated with risk levels. And so at level 1, comfortable, we have measures that may be considered. You don't automatically flip into all of these. There would be an assessment of what was happening with the data, and is there a specific sector that we need to be looking at, or is it general? And so for each level, you can see some of the measures to be considered, and you can go through those, ending with our extremely high-risk measures, which would really be bringing us back to what we saw in March and April when we were really in a suppression strategy with our public health orders. So I wasn't planning on going through all of these, but I wanted to make sure the board was aware that information is out there, make sure our community knows it's out there. And, as the corona meter is updated, you can kind of see that the mitigation measures that the public health staff and the Board of Health would be considering. And then we still have our COVID stats page where you can take a little bit deeper dive into the data.
Okay, George?
John, this is great. Do we know whether Eagle and Garfield County has sort of a similar metric system that we can tap into and see how we're doing and where our concerns are, if they're coming from our workforce, things like that?
Yeah, and in fact, George, we're working with Eagle and Garfield County on a regional meter. It'll likely right now have 3 levels associated with it, but similar metrics where the counties are collecting it. So we'll have a picking county as well as a regional. I know Eagle County has one. I am not clear if Garfield County has gone to this type of model yet. Eagle County has a 3-stage corona meter. We felt that the 4-stage was easier, frankly, to tie different increments of mitigation measures.
Okay. And can Eagle County, are they able to differentiate between the Roaring Fork Valley and Eagle Valley side?
Yeah, that's what we're working on and putting the regional Roaring Fork Valley data together. So
Great.
I know Karen and Heath were talking about that, and they're working with Garfield County now to bring that data together. So we should have a regional one soon.
So John, on this meter, when you're taking the mitigation measures, would the needle have to be over in the red zone before we are taking the mitigation steps in the red zone?
Yeah, Steve, unless there's something, these are not set in stone. So, if there's something that's very sector specific that may be pushing us into a concerned or cautious mode, we may look at stronger mitigation measures in those areas. But we're trying to provide some predictability about, as our data goes one direction or the other, what the likely actions within our public health orders are going to be.
So for instance, there are some things we're in the red zone right now, just the number counts are in the red zone, but other things are in the yellow or blue zone, so the it averages out kind of in the middle of the cautious area.
Correct. And so that's been the conversation with the epidemiologists and our public health staff about whether there should be weighting of these and how they should be averaged. I do not know the math behind all the these different metrics, but that has been the discussion about making sure that coronameter, given the various boxes that are colored in with very high to comfortable, balance out appropriately for community risk and mitigation measures. Any more questions on that?
Not seeing any. Go ahead, John. Greg?
Okay.
John, yeah, just thinking, this is giving us, it looks like a very good slice of time, as in what's happening right now, the present, or data compiled so far. I'm just wondering if there's a timeline. We've seen timelines before, just so we can watch the changes as they occur. So we can still find those timeline charts in there. I just didn't see it on your. Maybe you slipped by it when I. Yeah, stats. Okay.
So if you go back.
Yeah, no worries. It's all still there. Yeah.
All the same data still. So you have that longitudinal look, and I think, Greg, like these are types of charts that you're talking about, as well as our test activity. Yeah.
And those are very useful, just so we can see where we've been and maybe get a sense of the trend. It's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know for people who have questions, I had a call today from somebody who's just really wants to have a big wedding here in a couple months, and I said, well, I'm not optimistic about it, but where were they going to if they come to this site, just will they be able to have a question answered regarding what's permitted and what isn't, and what to expect, who to ask?
Yeah. So. The COVID response and recovery, if they want to know what the latest public health orders are, it's right there. The COVID stats page will have the coronameter along with the various mitigation measures, so you can kind of see where is that falling on the continuum and how close are we to moving to that next color. They can also see the safety plan requirements and employee guidance. And
great, that's very helpful. It looks like it's an easy thing to direct someone to. So this is really useful. Thanks.
We also put out a community survey on the website to collect a point in time of how people are feeling right now. So. Is that still full screen for y'all?
Yes.
It is? Okay. Whoops.
I guess that's full screen.
There we go. As far as the safer at home gradient, I had talked to you last week about this, that the state was putting together a stakeholder group. They in fact had their first meeting the very next day. I did end up on that stakeholder group, and what it's really looking at is it's comparing Colorado's current guidance, specifically with the measures related to the safer at home phase versus the protect our neighbor phase, with White House guidance that came out. And where the guidance comes from maybe wasn't as important as the 4 key questions that the stakeholder group has been asked to look at is, should the state metrics be revised in any way for assessing the level of risk within a community? And then based on that, what mitigation efforts should be recommended at various virus levels or measures of metrics? And then if there are mitigation measures identified, should they be best practices that the state puts out, or should they be requirements? And then the conversation about how to share the information. And I want to applaud this because we haven't had many opportunities to actually get ahead of these discussions and be part of a conversation about what should be done relative to COVID response. And so this has been a good discussion. So far, there's been general agreement that there should be a set of statewide metrics, that the metrics should reflect unique local circumstances with population. So for example, rural resort areas like Pickens County, our population flexes quite a bit more than our census population would indicate. So the metrics should be taking account of that. The same is true of communities with colleges or universities or what have you. And so wrestling with those issues, but there's been some openness to talking about that. In fact, the corona meter that I just showed you that we put out with the 4 levels was put up as an example of how we might look at metrics and tying mitigation measures to the metrics at a statewide level. Right now, and this is just an advisory group, so the advisory group is working to finish their recommendations, but there also seems to be agreement that there should be some base level of mitigation efforts that are tied to the risk levels identified statewide, and that there should be some base level that are probably required with the opportunity for communities to have the ability to address unique circumstances. So for example, we talk about outdoor outfitters. That may not be as applicable for the city and county of Denver, right? So working through those issues, and then haven't really got to the consistent messaging yet, but those conversations are continuing. I think we have a meeting tonight actually to look at specific recommendations around each of these questions. So more to come on that. Obviously, if the state does settle on a set of metrics, we hope it's reflective of what we're currently doing to a large degree, and addresses some of our unique local needs, and also provides for some consistent practice and communication across the state, which is something that we've been looking at. So just an update on that. Any questions on that?
Greg?
Yes, sure, John. Thank you for that. Just wondering, while you're in these conversations, does the I just remember we were all teased a month or so ago about the contact tracing protocols and maybe software or apps or things that were coming from the state, and that we were a test case. We're going to be the crash test dummies in Pickens County, along with another county for trying this. And I'm just wondering, any news on that? It doesn't sound like it's part of this, but it might be.
No, it definitely is, because a statewide system would hopefully help us collect information for the metrics, as well as share regionally. I do know that the state has finished their selection process, and so I think they're into contracting with the vendor. I apologize, Greg, I don't know who that is at this point. And I do think we are still in line to be a beta test site. So I will confirm that and try and get more of an update. I do know we're not using it right now, though. It's not implemented yet.
Right, great. Well, thank you. Yeah, just good to know to see if they're actually following through, and you know, I guess progress is slow at the state level, certainly.
And we had staff in the selection process there. We ready to go on? So wanted to let you know about some additional CARES Act funds that we're looking at. This is through CDPHE. They put out 2 pots of money, and we talked about this a little bit, but it's really about helping communities prepare to move to that protect our neighbors phase. Sorry for all the words on this slide, but there's really 2 pots of money that they're looking at. The first pot is for each county can apply for up to $50,000. There's no match required to do planning, and that those funds have to be spent within 90 days of the award, and all funds, because they're CARES Act dollars, have to be spent by December 30th. That's followed up with another CARES Act funding opportunity, which is a $150,000 implementation grant that does require a local match. We have been working with Eagle and Garfield counties to try and put together a regional proposal for use of these funds. And the funds in particular, there's encouragement to identify, highly impacted segments of the community and do planning around that. And so the regional project that we're proposing to pool the $50,000 from each county on is to engage our Hispanic and Latinx community members as consultants and leaders for kind of a community-driven change, and we're hoping to really have discussions with existing community organizations that are trusted and already representing the Hispanic and Latinx community to be part of leading these efforts. One of the reasons that the 3 counties, the staff, public health staff and staffs from the 3 counties would like to focus on the Hispanic and Latinx community is right now this community is disproportionately impacted in terms of the number of cases. In Pickens County, our census count would indicate that roughly 10% of the population is Hispanic Latinx, but the Hispanic Latinx community makes up 24.5% of our positive cases. In Eagle County, it's 38.18%, and in Garfield County, it's 69.4%. of the positive cases. So significantly disproportionate impact, and so strategies and outreach here seem particularly important for containment right now. The goal of the planning grant will be to work in a series of community meetings with leaders from the Hispanic and Latinx community to really uncover, what are the challenges that are particularly making the impacts of COVID-19 more challenging for the community, and really to help prioritize and add to the strategies that could help us bring the incidence of COVID-19 down in these in the Hispanic and Latinx community. So we would look forward to potentially an implementation grant around these strategies. Those would require a local match. We don't know exactly what that looks like, though, until we go through the planning side.
Okay, Kelly has her hand up.
Thanks, John. I appreciate this. One of my questions is about our formulation of a Latino response plan. So I appreciate the attention to this. And I guess I have a question for the planning grant. Is the expectation that that results in moving into the Protect Our Neighbors phase as CDPHE?
Yeah, I think it's really allowing, in looking at highly impacted portions of the community, the idea is that successful strategies to reduce the incidence of COVID would allow communities to potentially move in to protect our neighbor by strengthening the public health response.
So we're not
saying we're going there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's not like a requirement of it. At the end of all this, you need to be at this phase of response. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, no, this is great. I guess I'm curious on the timing of how, quickly you guys can get your hands on this money.
Well, we are finalized. We're actually submitting the proposals. Garfield is in, and Eagles and Pickens are, unless you tell me otherwise, they're basically going in today. CDPHE is interested in getting the dollars out. The conversations about developing the relationship with our existing community organizations and leadership have already started with our public health staff, as well as staff in Eagle and Garfield counties. So we're going to hope to be able to act on this pretty quickly.
Great. Wonderful to hear. Thanks.
Okay, Patty?
Is it 100% match? So we have to come up with a split of that 150?
So once you get to, yeah, Patty, so for the $50,000 for each county, there's no match required for the planning grant. On the implementation grant, it is a dollar for dollar match. So we'll have to have that discussion when we know better what the proposals are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, John, go ahead. Oh, Kelly again.
This will just preview one of my COVID-related open discussion items, but I think it would be really valuable to sort of figure out what the funding landscape is for our COVID response in general, and then have a conversation about what we would prioritize for distribution of that response funding.
Yeah, and we're struggling to get our hands around all the moving parts right now, Kelly, but I think I heard that in the last discussion too, that's something that the board is looking for. Speaking of which, some of the just an update on the economic indicators. And right now I'm sticking with kind of sales tax and building permit numbers because they're very elastic, as well as employment. We still need to get you the Castle Creek numbers, but just wanted to kind of show you the trends in sales tax. You know, our first 2 months were extremely, they're very strong, particularly given that we're projecting a 2% decrease, you might recall, or actually almost a 8% decrease from 2019 actual. March, predictably, was down 48% with losing the spring break. April down 7%, May up just under 3%. We did get our June numbers. It looks like we're down 16.5% from the previous June, and year to date, we're down 7.49%. Right now, that puts us roughly about 5.5% off of our budgeted numbers. This is better than what we were projecting at this point. You might recall when we gave you revenue projections, we were anywhere from, I think, 15 to almost 22% down on sales tax. I would also note that these numbers include a pretty strong January and February, so we'll probably continue to see some downward trends. But we think the sales tax projections that we gave you early in the event, we gave you the 3 scenarios. We think all of those, even our best case scenario, were probably conservative. And so we'll continue to watch this data, and we're working on preparing a new set of projections with the information that we've got. Building permits, you may recall, this was in the $3.6 million range last time. We've collected just around $200,000 in the last week. We're running ahead of our 2020 budget. We had projected a pretty big decrease for 2020, anticipating a recessionary period, which we've hit in some respects, but as we've seen, real estate and construction activity has been high. This is actually from our COVID webpage. It's the one tab I didn't hit was economic stats. So you can see this runs from February through June. Unemployment rates for Colorado in blue, Garfield in light blue, Eagle in pink, and Picking County is in orange. You can see we peaked out in April at 23.6%. Our June numbers were just around 16%. I expect that July will continue to see this trend down just based on the activity that we're seeing in town. And then employment, we did get July numbers. I think I told you I expected the employment numbers to be a decrease in the mid-70s. I was a little wrong there. The employment change was negative 68.1% for July. And I'm sorry, I did not do the overall calculation. I'll have to do that for you later.
Hey, John, just a quick regarding the economic indicators. I think it might be interesting just to see what the rest of the valley, Eagle and Garfield's indicators might be, and maybe they don't have it broken out for just the Roaring Fork Valley, but I'm just wondering if we can find that at some point just to see how they're doing in comparison.
Yeah, no, we can certainly ask. Of course, we've got Eagle and Garfield here. I can certainly try and track down what's been happening sales tax-wise for them and such, and what's been happening at Eagle's airport with employment.
Yeah, just not trying to find more work to do, but wouldn't it be great to be able to see how the salt and the municipalities up and down our valley are doing, how the counties in the valley are doing. Maybe that'll just give us a better picture of the economic health of our extended community. I'd be interested in seeing that if it's not a huge lift.
Yeah, we can ask them for it and see where they're at with that data. Thought I saw another hand up. I might be wrong.
No, we're good.
Okay. Just wanted to follow up. At the joint meeting last week, there were just there were a few items hanging out there as potential follow-up items, and I think they're worthy of further discussion. I know we're going to run out of time probably to explore these thoroughly, but the two major points that seem to come out of the joint discussion is a request on testing and to possibly look at requesting that the state look at a regional testing site like they've been putting in some communities. There's an announcement today of some new community testing sites. I want to just talk about that a little bit with the board because I think there are some timing and complexities around that, to be honest, that we didn't really get into in the discussion, but I think are worthy of discussion. There's also an ask around joint messaging. I think that's probably easier, and just wanted to do a check-in with the board if there were other takeaways. So we can take those in whatever order you all want to chat about them a little bit.
So, George, do you have something?
Yeah, I mean, for testing, I would certainly support working with the city and Snowmass Village and even BOCC to see whether we can get a regional testing center. And I would look at the Mid-Valley, Willits, because that way you actually could even include Glenwood Springs. And for me, that makes a great opportunity. You've got health providers in the Mid-Valley, in the Willits area already, and if we can get all the municipalities in the three counties to support that effort, maybe we'd have a shot at it.
Yeah, so maybe why don't I talk about the testing and frame that up a little bit more, because I think that there's always been a long-term goal of having universal testing available, and also hopefully having universal medical support for those who test positive. And the challenge that we keep running into is a capacity challenge. And so right now we know that our turnaround times are high. So when you look at the turnaround times on these community test sites right now, they're 4 to 5 days. And so the 4 to 5 days is getting outside the window to really support the box it in strategy, whether that be locally, or a case investigation and contact tracing, whether that be locally or at the state level. And so we've been working on a regional testing strategy to recognize both kind of the short-term capacity issues, the need to connect people with healthcare, and trying to really support the case investigation and contact tracing. And so the concern that we've had with the state continuing to add these types of testing centers right now is when you add thousands of more tests potentially a day into the queue, the turnaround times tend to go up if the lab capacity hasn't been increased. And so that is one of the main challenges we're finding right now. And so we've been focusing our local strategies on testing those who are symptomatic to get them into the contact tracing and case investigation. And so it may be a little bit more, I think staff's recommendation would be, we are working on a regional testing strategy. Charlie Spickert, who has been under contract for epidemiology with public health, we've continued our engagement with him to work on a regional testing strategy to help us understand kind of the how do we step through these periods where the capacities aren't there for the testing turnaround times, and also ensuring the medical support for the community so that we don't rush into something that actually makes our challenges worse, both locally and at the statewide level. I don't know if I framed that up in a way that makes sense, so I'll stop and take questions.
Kelly?
Thanks. Yeah, I guess I just wonder, you know, one of the benefits of a community testing site is you have that immediate intervention to give information, right? So, you know, regardless of a person's positive or negative outcome, that arrival for testing is, you're able to say, listen, you need to stay home. So we're doing this, we're gonna get your results, but in the interim, you need to stay home. That otherwise we just rely on our ordinary channels of dissemination for information to get that out there. And so I guess I wonder, does that outweigh whatever the negatives are that you know, that I know are real, but I guess I'm not fully clear on beyond a longer, well, no, I'm clear. I mean, I get the lag time in terms of being able to contact trace, et cetera, et cetera. But does somebody getting testing earlier and get the information that they need to stay home help to mitigate that, because they're then not circulating in the community?
You know, Kelly, I think to answer that question, we need to understand a little bit better, and we can dig into this with the state, what their process is. There is not consistent messaging, I think, right now around isolation, quarantine, and those pieces statewide. And so I think if that critical conversation were happening in a way that's consistent with what we're trying to do here in our region, there may be some real value in that. I don't know that discussion is happening at these testing sites, and so that's something we can explore a little bit and talk to our EPI team about.
And do you have an update on the regional testing strategy? Because I know we've been hearing about it, but I don't know what is envisioned or what a rollout.
Yeah, I don't have the details on it. And even if I did, I know I'm going to run out of time with you guys today. But yeah, I will. It would probably be best for us to get Charlie here and Dave Ressler to talk about that.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, Judd, I also think that a lot of people are hesitant to be tested because if they're tested and they have to wait 4, 5, 6 days at home, self-isolate, that's time lost from work, time lost from everything. And then, I think the better testing opportunities we get, the quicker, the more people will be tested. And that's information that we need to know. So I think that's a key issue. I know Valley View is now using more of the rapid test. AVH is kind of holding theirs for emergency type situations. So I think having the availability of more rapid tests is also something we should be looking into. And then looking at the new community testing site that you posted here from the state, I think it's interesting that they're not asking people for identification at the testing sites. It says there's no need for doctor's referral, health insurance, or identification at either site. So how do they contact trace people if people aren't identifying themselves? That's interesting, isn't
I don't
it?
have I don't have an answer for that
Yeah.
either.
I think that's interesting. I think at least people should have to identify who they are.
And their address, their physical
Yeah,
address,
yeah.
and a phone number contact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's interesting.
I agree.
I suspect it's probably to remove barriers for undocumented population.
Okay, Kelly?
Thanks. Yeah, I also would just offer that I don't think there's clear information out there that there are some paid employee leave programs now that didn't exist prior to COVID that, you know, we should help disseminate that information in the community. A community testing site could help disseminate that information out into the community, that there is some employer responsibility to support people while they're being tested and while they're sick.
Well, I think a good follow-up would be to follow up with kind of a discussion around the regional testing strategy and how all of it fits together, and maybe hearing from Charlie and our public health staff, if you all are open to that, to take a little bit deeper dive on it, so that any request that is made kind of fits within that rubric, and maybe doesn't cause an unintended consequence, I think, for our community or the state. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And then I do think the joint messaging is something that's been ongoing. I don't know if there were other issues that the board took away that we need to have our eyes on.
Kelly?
Thanks. Yeah, I had offered a couple of other things just at the end of our time because we had to move on to REMP. And so there wasn't an opportunity for everyone to weigh in or on that. But two other things were around enforcement, you know, shared principles for enforcement. Maybe that isn't a problem anymore. Maybe that's operating just fine, but I'm not sure we've closed that loop since our conversations about enforcement with the sheriff. And then also conversation around infrastructure, resources for winter activities, winter economy, winter, you know, all that.
Yeah. All people, I should have remembered that one, right? Anything else? I know we're running over a little bit.
Greg?
I just wanted to throw out it seems like the buzz, of course, is with the schools and returning to schools. And a lot of people ask me, that we should be telling the school district what to do, or we should have influence with the school district. I'm not entirely certain that I understand the relationship with the school district and who they'll answer to with the public health department or our public health director or the state as they're making choices about how they'll reopen the schools. And even where public input would go if somebody has an idea, to talk about outdoor classrooms or cohorting, pods of kids so that they really kind of quarantine together through the season. All these suggestions, and people are always contacting me about this, and I'm not always sure what I can say to them about how I could have any influence, or we could.
So, Greg, the school district is able, it's a very decentralized system. So each school district is able to make those types of policy decisions about how to come back. The school board and administration. And so public health's role is not authoritative, but we are consulting with the school districts. And I just want to acknowledge we've had good partnerships with both the school districts and Pickens County, but our role has been more in a consulting capacity to help them help the school districts understand the best practices, the data and such, and we've been working with the medical advisory team. And so it's not authoritative. We cannot issue a directive for the schools to do one thing or another through public health. That doesn't fall within our authority. However, we are acting in that consultative role. So I think those ideas, certainly the school board has been meeting, and the Aspen School District has been having stakeholder kind of meetings and public meetings to take input on these things, and those are all appropriate avenues.
Kelly?
Thank you. Thanks, Greg, for bringing that up. I'm sure you, like me, with school-age kids, running your brain in circles on what the right decisions are. And, you know, it's clear that the school district is totally relying on public health, and I appreciate that collaborative working, you know, relationship and just science-based information. You know, I do want to just read something that the governor posted today. He posts information from a chemistry professor at that UC Boulder who studied aerosols for 2 decades, who shares some tips to stay safe inside public spaces. Don't go to indoor spaces unless absolutely necessary. If you are indoors, spend the least time there as you can. Make sure when you're indoors, the room is well ventilated, including mechanical ventilation like particle air filters and natural ventilation like open doors and windows. Always wear a mask indoors. Make sure the mask fits and doesn't have gaps. And anyone who is talking to others, especially to a large group, should be wearing a mask. And, you know, I found this a little startling because it's how does this line up with the school guidance that is coming out from the state? And how do schools reasonably achieve this, particularly looking at the winter, you know, when we're going indoors more? And, you know, I have a lot of concern around this. And I also feel like we as a community are poised, probably better than many other communities, to facilitate responses to these concerns, emphasis on outdoor learning, you know, things like that. And I just hope that, you know, to our Board of Health reps and the Board of Health, that, you know, we offer creative solutions to, I'm sorry, the lights are going out here. You know, just be bold on this. And if these are the concerns and this is the simple solution, you know, and this is the simple problem to solve, you know, and then to do it and to just rely on those basics of, you know, can we minimize our time indoors, if that is the first recommendation when we think about sending our kids to schools. And, you know, I'll leave it at that. I rack my brain all day long on this question right now, as I know all the parents in the Valley do too.
When, you know, I think it's a really difficult position that you all find yourselves in sometimes, is that the, you know, school district has multiple interests that they're trying to meet, and objectives around education and protecting public health and safety, and also their broader role in the community. We, you know, from frankly, almost a child care kind of perspective. And I think that's part of the reason that public health does not have authority, frankly, over the school district, is it's up to them to balance those various interests that public health doesn't have expertise in. That's all I've got for you.
Okay,
we always take an hour or more on this.
Thank you, John. So let's see, we're past when we were going to do a break. At some point I need to stand up and stretch and go to the restroom, but others are at home, or you could go out, slip out when you need to. What's everybody's druthers right now? Do you
Take a
wanna-
break.
Do you want
Well,
to
I
take a
think-
break?
Just so you know, I think we have a lot of open discussion. So, and we're supposed to adjourn at 4:30, so, I don't know how we're gonna fit the rest of this in.
Let's do a 5-minute break, and then we'll just go through the rest, the future agendas, the open discussion, growth management. If Cindy shows up early, we could slip her in and then go back to open discussion. George?
And 4:30 is not a magical end time for me. If we need to go to 5, that's fine. I mean, we shouldn't get stuck on these end dates if we've got business to still do.
Well,
So let's take a 10-minute break.
Well, and let me just say, just John, for future scheduling, we have a 30-minute open discussion item here for Cindy. We need to give actual time, I think, for an open discussion item that's going to be 30 minutes. That's an agenda. I mean, that's not an open discussion. So, yeah.
Okay, 10-minute break. Grassroots will be taking a breather here.
See you at 3:25.
3:25. Okay, welcome back to our meeting on August 11th, our work session. And let's go over the future agenda items pretty quickly, John, and then we'll go right into the growth management outreach piece.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot for you. Kelly, you had asked for in August an update on the Valley Health Alliance's efforts with Rocky Mountain Health Plans. Those will be finalized at the beginning of September, actually, by Division of Insurance. So we'll probably get them in after that.
Great.
And I'll stop there.
The one thing I noticed, our Thursday meeting, it listed as being at the county building and not at the Door Hosier building, the airport meeting, in the future agendas.
Okay, we'll definitely get that fixed.
So I think we all know where we're going, but then we need to make sure it carries on to the public record so people go to the right place. George?
Yeah, John, on August 25th, when we have a follow-up meeting regarding the airport board discussion, we start at 11 and for an hour. It's always hard to know whether that will be enough time. Maybe we start at 10:30.
Yeah, my guess is an hour is not going to be enough time.
Don't forget I have ACRA that morning.
I think that's why it's starting at 11.
Yeah.
So we'll try and find more time.
Yeah, I had noticed that too and wondered if we should, we could work through lunch on it or do a shorter lunch break. But even that, it's probably going to be a 2-hour kind of a discussion we're going to have anyhow. So we'll probably have to plan another session sometime. Okay, anything else on future agendas? Greg?
Yeah, only another thing that's on a lot of people's minds, certainly out here in the rural part of the county, are the how dry it is. And I'm thinking at some future meeting, certainly it seems like we are so busy, I don't want to throw anything in too quickly, but conversation with perhaps our fire chief or discussion of when the sheriff, maybe we'll be having that discussion sooner with the sheriff on the moisture content in the soils and what fire mitigation measures we could be recommending and perhaps helping county residents with. The growth of the brush in all these neighborhoods is not abating at all, and I'm just hoping people's minds are on fire mitigation, and maybe we can get Valerie in as well.
George?
And
I apologize if I didn't see that.
Can I just tag on to that? It's rolling into an open discussion, but I was up to the Frying Pan Caucus meeting last night. We had a Forest Service representative there, and they were talking about going into the weekly meeting with all the law enforcement and the fire departments. And I strongly encourage her to recommend going to stage 2 fire restriction. We talked about how dry, how windy, how hot it's been. She talked about the increase in campers, and many of them are novice campers who really don't know how to put out a fire. We saw that incident up at the Lincoln Creek a couple days ago, and I'm hoping that we will be going into a stage 2 fire restriction after their conversation today, because why are we waiting for a disaster to happen? We're seeing fires pop up. I-70's closed. I mean, we're already in a disaster area stage right now, and I think it's just incumbent upon our law enforcement and Forest Service and BLM to go into stage 2 immediately.
So, George, they did have that meeting at a communication from the sheriff that there's agreement to go into stage 2. I believe, though, it's happening on Friday, is my understanding, with all the agencies getting coordinated. So the stage 2 fire restrictions are coming. If you don't mind, just for the public, that means those restrictions prohibit building, maintaining, or attending or using a fire or campfire, charcoal grill, any type of charcoal fueled broiler, tiki torch, wood burning stove, sheepherder stove, or open fire of any type. And those restrictions include developed camping or picnic grounds and private property. So there's a number of other restrictions, but I think those are probably the most salient for our visitors and residents to be keeping in mind. So I was saving that for open discussion, but I think we're floating between the two. Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of open discussion, does anyone else have any future agendas? I think we covered everything. So we're going to move right into the growth management public outreach update. And Cindy, I'll pass the torch on to you to be leading that discussion. You're muted, Cindy.
I see that Ellen and Zach are here with us today too, and we've been having quite an experience with the last 7 weeks. We've had meetings on Thursday mornings from 10 to 12 and had a lot of participation from public that you may not have expected this discussion. Unfortunately, the development community has not. We wanted to give you a heads up that
I'm having a hard time hearing Cindy.
Yeah, so am I.
Can you hear me better now?
Not really.
Just
a little bit, yeah. It sounds like you're kind of muted there. Not sure what's with the microphone.
I have my microphone up pretty high. Can you hear me now?
Do you have earphones with like a microphone?
It's real muffled.
Not that I think it makes a difference, but I'll go inside my house and my porch. Let's see if this, can you hear me better?
That's a bit clearer and louder.
You can hear me?
It still is kind of muffled though.
Closer to the better. Get closer to it if you can.
Okay. Can you hear me better?
No.
Cindy, sorry, if you go to your microphone on the Zoom, there's a little up button, and go to audio settings. Do you see that?
Yes.
Click on audio settings, and there is a microphone input setting and input volume. Do you see that?
Microphone, I have track audio.
Microphone array, is that it?
You should have an input level for your microphone.
Got it.
You got it?
Yep.
Maybe turn that up a little bit and see if that helps. Or that went the other direction.
So maybe we can come back to Cindy and continue with the rest of our meeting while she's figuring out how we can hear. Maybe not.
So Cindy, one question, were you just going to be handing it off to Zach or to Ellen perhaps? Maybe they could be talking while you're trying to figure it out?
To Zach and Ellen right now.
Yeah, I can jump in if that would help, right? So I think what Cindy was saying was that we had 9 meetings scheduled with our public outreach group, and we've had 7 so far, and pretty good participation. We've had, I don't know, anywhere from 19 to about 25 people participating regularly, and we have not had a lot of input from the professional planning community. There have been a few who've attended and given us some good feedback. So let's see, in those 7 meetings, we've covered several topics, including, we started with just a general 101 on land code and growth management, just to give people some background. And then we moved into, the next discussion was really focused on making sure that we understand what community benefits we're trying to achieve. And we've had that conversation with you and the Planning Commission, but it was really helpful to flesh this out with some of our citizens. And we were also able to prioritize some of the community benefits that they thought were really important. And then we moved into a discussion about the locations for growth and development in general, whether development should be located within the urban growth boundary areas or the rural areas. And then from there, we moved into discussion about house size. And, that's always the elephant in the room. We got a lot of feedback, but we were really trying to focus on house size as it relates to job generation, energy consumption, and waste generation and traffic. So we really tried to focus the discussion to some extent. And then in the last meeting, which we had last week, we started to outline some examples of potential alternatives, examples of alternatives that we could take moving forward with some growth management structures. And that was an interesting discussion. We really just got started on that. We'll come back this week on Thursday to continue that discussion. So we've got some really good input to date. We are planning to come to you hopefully on September 15th in a joint work session with the Planning Commission to give you a more complete overview of what we've heard to date and where we think we're going. And then we also have, now that's not for that, hopefully that joint work session will work. It's not on the Planning Commission schedule yet, but we're working on that. And then we've also we'll come back to you on October 20th in work session, hopefully with concepts for you to consider. And that will be the first of a couple, 2 or 3, or we're not sure how many more meetings to start to develop some land use code amendments from there. So that's generally where we are. I don't think I've missed anything, but I'm glad to take questions. And Cindy, I don't know if Cindy's able to come in and add anything to that or not, but in the meantime, if you have questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
So Cindy, why don't you try talking? Let's see what it sounds like.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's much better.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm so technically savvy and was able to get that working for us. No, but thank you. Ellen gave a really good summary. I think the process has been going well, and we do look forward to, putting the pieces together for you. Like Ellen said, having a work session with you and the P&Z to give us the direction that we need to formulating the code amendments.
Okay.
But where I started before, I knew you couldn't hear me, was we are disappointed because so much of the development community is wrapped up in, the frenzy of the real estate market and all that's going on right now with that. So many of the private sector planners and the real estate attorneys are busy with that. We have reached out several times asking for people to review the website because we have everything on the website every meeting, and I'm hoping that the board will have an opportunity to go back and watch some of the meetings that you might be interested in as well. And we also have videos up. Thanks to Zach, we have a YouTube connection, and we have videos up with some people's vision for the future. And I think one of the most important things we just heard recently that I'd like to pass on, and I think is beginning to happen more and more, but is that unless we work with the city, and unless the city works with us, a lot of our measures won't be as efficient or productive. So I think, right after our step in looking at our code, we need to work on working with the city, maybe as Philip had mentioned, with an update of the Aspen Area Community Plan and looking at the Aspen Area Community Plan through the lens of climate action as well. So I think little by little, we'll start to pull all the pieces together, but I think we've got a great start with some ideas for our land use code.
Okay, questions, Greg?
I was just thinking your comment about the development communities is basically too busy to get engaged here because we see what I'm going to call the COVID response, the arrival. There's so much activity now. And I think the big question is this going to slow down? Will there ever be another off season, or is this the new normal? Is it going to be July 4th all year round now? And the two contributors that I see to it are, one, the COVID response and people seeking refuge, but also the teleconferencing Zoom phenomenon that they say that up to 20% of professionals, people who can afford to come to Aspen, probably don't need to go back to their offices any longer because they can now work from anywhere. So I think that I'm hoping the conversations are including what seems to be an imminent and immediate change. We might not be able to say ever again that our population is 18,000 in 15 County. I think we may be saying we're at 50,000 or whatever, 35 anyway, that we talk about when we're at full capacity. So I'm just hoping that becomes a huge part of the conversation ongoing, because those are all the questions I'm hearing and that I certainly have.
Well, I think it has given us quite the opportunity to look at when every house is full, and even more than full, about extended families and people coming. And so I think we were so fortunate in that we got a lot of research done prior to the pandemic, and we had all the research done that was part of not only our look at our infrastructure and how it relates to growth, but also when we looked at the airport, we were able to look at some of those seasonal numbers. And so we have some really great numbers. It's all on our website, but if we are at a population typically of about 18,000 in Pickens County, and then our seasonal population with second home owners is over 10,000, we are looking at close to a new base population, given what we know, of about close to 30,000 in Pickens County. And then we did not experience, because the lodging was not open to 100%, but if lodging had been open to 100%, and if we had our daily commuter traffic coming in from just the workforce perspective, we were looking at another 8,000 with workforce commuters, and then on top of that, going up and swelling if we were at 100% of our lodging capacity to about 53,000. So we're not there because we aren't able to be at capacity with our tourist accommodations right now, but we definitely, from the estimates I can look at, we've increased population by about 40% overnight. It gives us quite the of reality check on our utilities structure, and the dashboard that Gabe has put together along with our economics group. We're not only dashboarding and monitoring the economic recovery, if you will, or the economic status on a monthly basis, but we're also looking at our utility use with Holy Cross. We're looking at our sand use. We're looking at air quality, where we have that information in place. So and traffic. So we have all those monitors in place, which is so helpful right now. And I can't wait to look at those July numbers, because up until the July numbers, we really didn't have much of a, a full-blown look at what our new base might be. So we've got a lot of information and we've got a lot of data to work off of. And Zach and Ellen have just done a spectacular job of pulling together data in a way that I think the board will be interested in looking at it in terms of charts, looking at not only square footage as far as the charts go, but how that square footage relates to our first attempt at climate lens with what does that do per square footage metrics that we're using to the overhaul, the over long-term look at our waste, traffic, and at our gosh, help me out here, guys. Waste,
job generation, energy use.
Energy. I was going to say utility. Yeah.
And utility energy use. Yeah. So we've got. I mean, it's just almost overwhelming the amount of data and how we're going to connect the dots as a community. But it's.
Cindy, if I could just to follow up on that, to add a little bit, another thing that's always shocking, in addition to the arrival, the influx of all the people we have here now, is just that the opportunities for schools and fire districts and others to develop around the community, around the county, and it seems as if we don't have an awful lot of control. And I'm wondering, how does a master planning effort, how does a community planning effort account for the possibility of a CMC development or a fire district development or a tree farm or an aspen tree, development coming in and doing something, since we don't seem to have an awful lot of levers we can pull on those. Is that part of the conversation?
Well, yes and no, in the sense that the board at one point had asked us to look at where special districts and jurisdictions had ownership of land. So we're putting that map together for you, but and look at growth patterns related to all of that. So we did talk a little bit about that with the public outreach group. As far as the legalities of special districts and other jurisdictions, John's on the phone and I'll punt it to him, but basically, given the state laws right now, there's not a whole lot that the Board of County Commissioners could do to actually affect change when jurisdictions and special districts are involved. And it does bring up land use considerations and definitely challenges for us, because each district has their own mission and their own, what they need to accomplish. So it puts us in a spot we haven't been in before. Pickens County typically is used to having some level of control with land use.
I'll just add that from a broader regional perspective, we can do, we can do to participate with other agencies and governments who are working on their comprehensive plans. And as a practical matter, Eagle County is about to update their master plan, and they have included us on the technical advisory committee. To the extent we can have some influence there, we will, and hopefully there'll be more efforts like that we can participate in.
George.
Yeah, good luck with that, Ellen, with Eagle County. I don't have much faith in. It's nice that they invited us to the table. Will they listen to us? They certainly haven't in the past when it comes to development. But back to Greg's concerning question. The city of Aspen has something like 250 projects going on downtown right now, within the city. So that's, yeah, it's unbelievable. So that's one reason I think that, Cindy, you're not able to get some of the development community involved. I'm not as, maybe I'm sort of naive, but I don't see our permanent population doubling with these second homeowners. I think what we're hearing is maybe, you know, there's a buyer here and there's a buyer there, but it's not like there's 1,000 buyers coming in. And so that remains to be seen after the next 6 months, how that plays out once COVID sort of gets a vaccination that allows people to go back to their normal lives. Because I think people are moving here for a different reason. They're moving here, as we all know, because of COVID. But I'm not sure that's a sustaining reason for these people to give up their primary homes. But that's just a guess.
George, I would also argue that demographics, we've been watching that over the years through trends and people who are of retirement age, baby boomers, all saying that they wanted to spend more time at their second homes. So I don't know if it's full-time or what, but even without the pandemic, I think we would have seen a shift of more time being spent here, whether or not they'd become full-time residents. You know, who knows?
Yeah, and the other issue for retirees, older people, of course, coming here from sea level is altitude. And even those of us who've lived here forever, eventually altitude gets us to have to move down to lower elevation. So that's sort of another part of the equation.
Okay, don't see any more hands being raised. Do you have anything else you want to present right now? I look forward to our work sessions later on this fall. That will be interesting.
Yeah, thank you. We are, I think we've had a lot of interest even with the Zoom meetings and really interesting comments from all aspects of the community. So I think we've had some real estate representatives, some, you know, older folks, some younger folks. That part's been across the board. It's too bad that we weren't able to open it up and have face-to-face meetings, but I think that given the circumstances, we've gotten a lot of feedback that we can share with you.
Okay. Ellen, you're muted.
Sorry, we've also had some caucus members join the conversation, which is, in my opinion, always a good thing. So, yeah, that about wraps up the groups we've been hearing from.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being here today and giving us the update. So let's move on. I see that Lisa is on. Lisa, are we waiting for Kestrel to join us also?
Yes, we are, Steve. She, I think, is going to join us at just about 4, so maybe in about 5 minutes. I think we had got pushed back a little bit on time, so she should be hopping on any minute. I can flip her a quick email, too.
Okay, well, we have other stuff to discuss, so when she joins us, then we'll switch over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, so going to open discussion items. Patty.
Yeah, we had a issue up at the Maroon Bells with the decision to close drop-offs and whatever by local shuttle services. I think they were given about 24 hours notice or less, and they had already booked people. I think the concern is that they were shuttling some people up there, dropping them off, and then those folks were depending upon RAFTA services to bring them back down without a reservation. So they said that they're dropping some of their clients off to go to Crested Butte, which I think is fine, but it sounds like the numbers were a little skewed and there might be more people that are just getting dropped off to get around the RAFTA reservation system. So, John, I don't know if you've been involved. Is Peacock still here? I don't know if he's been involved in those discussions. I know Brian Pettit has been. my response to that would be then people need to show their reservation to get back on the bus to come down. So the shuttle service would have to figure out a way to get people back down from the bells. I don't know. I mean, I think it's great when people can get a ride up there and hike to Crested Butte, but I don't know, John Peacock, if you have any more information about it.
Yeah, so Patty, I haven't been part of those conversations, but I'll touch base with Brian.
Okay, and just let me know. So that's one thing I have. The other one is the federal government's decision to defer payroll taxes, which would mean we'd have to pay them back at some point, like probably right at the holidays. Is there a way to opt out of that so we could let finance know, or employees could let finance know that they wanted to have payroll taxes continued to be taken out?
Yeah, we're still looking into that, Patty, because obviously the executive orders weren't, they were a surprise.
Okay, so that's something else I think we need to. The last thing I have is the letter we got from Linda Wag from the Woody Creek Caucus about participation at Phillips. I think we need to include them in, but we have the issue coming back to us in 2 weeks, I think. So we need to find a way to get Woody Creek, I think, the caucus up to speed on what's happening at Phillips. We have not really made a final decision that allows for big growth, full growth, which Linda put in her letter. So I think we need to clarify that with the caucus. That's it for me right now.
Okay. And let's see, right now, George, is this a follow-up on what Patty said? Go ahead, George.
Two things. One is typical with anything Trump does. He does things without going through the legal procedure. So there's a question about whether he can actually impose that executive order. He'll be challenged like he gets challenges on everything. And then in terms of the Wood Creek Caucus, John, isn't Bob Schultz and company doing sort of regular updates to the caucus?
Yeah, we have been doing updates. I do not. I think Linda is under the impression that some final decisions have been made when they haven't.
Yeah, that's kind of standard operation for a few people.
George, I have one other
Patty?
thing. Yeah, one other thing real quick. And John, I don't know if we can talk about this in public session. The issue with Bootsy Bellows and Andrew Sandler. We've had conversations with people in the community who wonder why we didn't enforce a fine on him to really make a statement. I know that's a public health decision, but John, at some point, if you could let us know how that decision was made and if that decision was truly made.
Okay, Kelly, you have a follow-up on these items?
Yeah, I do. I just want to, from my understanding in the question, when I've asked throughout the Phillips process, is that that they were not going back to the caucus and the community with every iteration of input, and that, you know, the last meeting we had, my question was, is when would the community get to, you know, what does this look like? When do they get a weigh in on this? Blah, blah. And my understanding from Bob was that after we had sort of honed in more closely on a site plan before it went to planning and zoning, that they would go to the caucus. So I don't think that there's been, you know, at every step in question in the process, engagement with the caucus, but a commitment to going to them before the formal application was submitted.
Yeah, I think that's right, Kelly.
So we need to just clarify that with Linda or the caucus itself.
Greg?
Yeah, great. Just to follow up on Patty and her maroon bells, I wasn't very aware of the shuttle service issue as much, but just regarding your comment earlier on bicycling and bicyclists up there, and having ridden it a lot recently, you do see a lot of cyclists, whether they're on rental e-bikes or regular bikes or just clusters of people who are out enjoying the ride to the bells. I think it might make sense. It'd be great to talk to Brian about perhaps a sign or two, just reminding people to keep right and to stay in the lane, except to pass, keep right, except to pass, something like that, because you see people riding uphill in the downhill lane you see really people just kind of forgetting standard protocol on a road, and it could get dangerous. And so I just wanted to circle back because Patty had brought that up originally, and I don't know if we need to prohibit anything, but I'd love to see some direction on how to ride there to remain safe. The other circling back to fire mitigation, thinking about all the rentals, the second homes that are full. It may not occur to people that what to do in a Class 2 fire situation. So I really hope that we have a public outreach campaign that is in everyone's face on what we need to do to behave. Last night in my neighborhood, I smelled smoke, and it smelled close. It smelled as if somebody was burning something very near my house. And for all I know, it was coming from Glenwood Canyon or some other place, but it was so powerful. I actually went out and walked around with my binoculars to look for local smoke. So I think as long as we bring everybody up to speed, we might be able to get through this fire season. And the last thing I was going to bring up only is that it has occurred to me, if we do have an influx of new residents, certainly they're welcome. And I think that it would be great to start contemplating a local 101 program for those who would be interested in knowing how things happen here, where the water comes from, why we protect all this open space. All those important things that are important to us may not be obvious to a lot of our newest residents. And so I was contemplating a local 101 class, and I think we'll just nominate John Peacock to teach it. Thank you. And Patty, of course.
Well, we could bring Slat's Cabbage into the mix too to teach a section of the class. Okay. Well, we do have some more open discussion things. We will come back to them after we have the presentation on the American Whitewater Grant Letter. So let's go to that topic now, and we have Lisa McDonald and Kestrel Kuntz are here to join us on that discussion. So Lisa, are you presenting or is Kestrel presenting?
I can do a little introduction for you all and then let Kestrel take it from there.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I am Lisa McDonald. My video, I just installed a new camera, and of course now it's not working. So I'm Lisa McDonald with the Pickens County Healthy Rivers program, and joining us today is Kestrel Kuntz with American Whitewater. Kestrel is seeking a letter of support that they are applying for a CWCB water plan grant. And the grant is for an additional economic study that will complement the flow, preference, and votable days study project that the BOCC authorized funding for in June. I can let Kestrel take it from there, and she can fill you in maybe on a little more detail of that, but you want to fill them in, Kestrel?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And yeah, again, I think, well, I met all of you guys via Zoom a couple months ago, but my name is Kestrel, and as Lisa said, I work for American Whitewater. But first up, I just wanted to say thank you again to you guys for approving our funding for our flow preference and votable days study back in June. We are moving forward gung-ho on that and working on developing the flow preference survey, and hopefully we'll have that ready to share with you guys and the public as well soon. So that's exciting. And then just when you guys did approve our funding, you had kind of highly recommended that we look for additional funding for our work in the Valley. And so over the past couple months, we have been working on a larger grant proposal to the CWCB for their water plan grant program. Originally, that deadline was going to be August 1st, but the CWCB board in mid-July, as maybe you heard, decided to postpone that until December 1st. And so we are kind of working within that new time frame. And I believe you guys should have seen the just drafted letter of support for you guys to sign if you want to. But just a little bit more background on that. We have been working with the University of Colorado at Boulder to develop an economic analysis approach that works directly with our votable days study. And we're currently working on developing that for the Dolores River and are looking to expand that to a few other rivers in Colorado, including on the Roaring Fork and Crystal. And so it is a separate study from the flow preference and boatable days work, but the boatable days study is a necessary component for the economic analysis. And so that is kind of a short little synopsis of what we plan on doing with the CWCB funds. Kind of the overall outcome of the project is aimed at just getting like a comprehensive understanding of what the economic impacts would be associated with a boatable day, and then how changes in water management might impact the recreation economy in the Roaring Fork Valley. And so our proposal to the CWCB actually covers a few other river basins as well. And so it's going to include the Yampa, the Cache la Poudre, and the Dolores, as well as the Roaring Fork Valley. And the total amount of the grant, we're still actually working on the total amount, but it's going to be over $70,000 of an ask to CWCB. And of that, $19,355 will be specifically for the Roaring Fork. And so that way we'll have a one-to-one match with the county funds that you guys approved in June. And so usually the CWCB recommends letters of support from the roundtable as well as other pertinent parties or interested stakeholders. And so it would be great to receive a letter of support from Pitkin County. I think it would make our application a lot stronger. And then it would also make it a little bit easier for us to ask the roundtable for a letter of support as well, which we plan to do. And so you guys have the draft letter of support, but obviously happy to work with you guys to change that in any way to fit your needs. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it at there, but if you guys have any questions, please ask away.
So Kestrel, I read the letter. The letter sounded fine to me. I didn't see anything that I would actually change in the ask. And I guess you've answered the questions I had about the whole thing was, what are you going to do with the money from CWCB in relation to what we had already given you? So you've explained that very well. I guess the one question I would have with the extra $19,000 for the Roaring Fork study, would you be able to make that be just a longer term of time that you are conducting the study, or how could you expand this study in any fashion?
Sorry, when you say study, do you mean the original flow preference and boatable days study, or the economic study?
Yes, the original.
Well, I think that we would try and still stay within the same original timeline that we had planned for the flow preference and boatable days study, and then the economic analysis would then come after that. And so it's really like a linear approach. First you have to do the flow preference study, and then the boatable days analysis, and then the economic analysis. And so they're very complementary and work off each other, but kind of one is required before the other. And I believe in our original proposal that we, had put together for the Healthy Rivers Board back in May, stated that we'd be done with our boatable day study by the end of this year. And then I think just with kind of the delay and actually receiving the funds, I think that's already going to be pushed back a little bit. And it's likely that we will not actually receive CWCB funds until this spring of 2021. Mm-hmm. And so that is when I anticipate the economic analysis being able to take place.
Okay. Well, that sounds good to me. Other board comments on the letter? Greg?
Yeah,
thumbs
I'm
up?
good with it. I'm good with it. That was a great letter.
Kelly?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. I look forward to, if it's funded, seeing the breakout of information per the different river basins, so that, Roaring Fork versus Crystal. And we can be helpful in helping you present that at the River District. Greg and I are the appointees to that, so, once you get that submitted, feel free to reach out when it's scheduled, and we can stand up and advocate for it there.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That's really good to know.
Okay, I think we have one thumbs up. There haven't been comments. I think everybody's pretty happy with it. The letter was well written, so yeah, you could finalize it with Lisa in terms of, or maybe Lisa would just take the letter and then like make it unique for Pickens County on our letterhead and all, all that kind of stuff that needs to be done.
Right. I'll work with Charlotte on that, and I think we're going to get a separate letter from the Healthy Rivers Board too, so she'll get 2 from us. So we might change the signatures a little bit, but the letter will be the same.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, thanks Lisa,
Thank
and
you.
thanks Kestrel for coming
Thanks, guys.
today.
Thanks, Kestrel.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. We look forward to also sharing the flow preference survey with you guys when it's finalized. So
Okay,
keep
we
an eye
look
out for
forward to seeing the result of that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Steve, you're doing well. You're making up time.
Okay, back to our open discussion. And Kelly, you had something you wanted to bring up. Do you want to do it now?
Well, I was just chiming in on Phillips. I do have 2 things I think that I would just like to get on the table, I guess. One is with regards to recruiting for Pat Bingham's replacement, I would like to make a plug for bilingual skills and maybe reforming that job description to more greatly include that, because I think my observations in the county is that we seek those services out on perhaps, a sector by sector or topic by topic need rather than integrating that in our overall communication strategy. And I think that that would be a real asset in helping us, more sincerely be inclusive in our community. So I would like to put that out there. And then I also was thinking when we were presenting with Nan today about the Healthy Community Fund, I don't know where we're at in those applications, and I'm wondering if there's a conversation to be had about restructuring the grant cycle related to COVID-19 response. And so that's another idea for conversation, how that aligns with the ballot language, and if that is something that we would seek to do this year.
Kelly, could I get a little bit more of your thoughts on what that looks like or what you're thinking of so I can answer that question maybe a little better? And it can be offline or right now, whatever.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can talk offline on it. I guess, should COVID-19 response be one of the filters that the grants are looked at, just with the great need that we have this year? And is there opportunity with that grant fund to fulfill some of the service requests that we're seeing that are being asked of the general fund, account that maybe could be aligned with the Healthy Community Fund?
Okay. George?
Yeah, I understand the purpose of that. I'd be a little concerned that when we look at all the segments, the arts and the culture nonprofits that apply who are being affected by COVID perhaps in a different way because they're not able to operate, they're not able to fundraise as they normally do. So I'd be concerned about shifting dollars away from our ongoing organizations. A lot of them have partnerships anyway, but because all the organizations are being affected, nonprofits, by COVID in one way or the other. So that. I'll just throw that out.
And I don't want to I don't want to offer that, like, my bringing up this topic isn't with any presumption. I just wonder if there's opportunities there that we should also consider. And I don't know if we're too far gone. I mean, if that grant cycle's already started, it's started. So.
Okay, John, did you have any open discussion items you wanted to bring forward?
I was just going to let you know that our current status for sign-ups on Thursday is 19 speakers. We expect that will increase a little bit between now and Thursday, but should be a pretty manageable evening.
Can I ask a question?
Patty?
John, if we have fewer speakers, we're still only allowing 3 minutes, correct? For each speaker?
That would be my, it would be my recommendation, because this is not the only opportunity for people to speak, and from an equity perspective, you don't want to hold one group to 3 and not another group.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just wanted the public to know that.
I talked with Rich Engelhardt about that, and he said you'd be
3
opening
minutes.
a can of worms if you allowed one group to have more time than others.
And John, you'll be
Yeah.
at that meeting, yeah? Are you going to bring your neat little your iPad timer? Good, because that works really well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, Greg?
I thought you were going to ask if John was going to bring his dog. You know, I want to see the dog. Thank you. I know that at least one city councilman and the mayor of Aspen have been talking a lot about the recent article regarding how the cardboard recycling went away and it's filling up at the landfill, being tossed in the landfill. And that initiated a conversation. I think the mayor sent out a letter. I responded and just said, I think we all ought to talk about this. So I can imagine you're going to hear from the city, John, that they'd like to have a conversation on what can we do to get a handle on the cardboard recycling and maybe the composting and look at this. And I think you're part of that email thread. But I just wanted to bring up that I'd be very interested in participating with the city to look at ways we can expand composting and what cardboard recycling, what other opportunities lie, and maybe have a meeting on that with Kathy, or at some point when our schedule, if our schedule frees up. I just wanted to alert the board that conversation has just begun to talk about, and it really was brought on by was it the cover of the newspaper a couple days ago, showing the mountain of cardboard that's just been hauled out to the landfill. And then the other thing is that regarding the Healthy Community Fund, I appreciate that comment from Kelly and I think I'd like to just open it up a little bit and to say, maybe there's a time for a conversation on how our culture and our community has been affected by COVID-19 and the economic fallout, and what opportunities should we be looking for, and what changes we're seeing. We're trying to get a grip on just what all this means, maybe for the Healthy Community Fund, maybe for services, as Cindy pointed out, our utilities. Things have changed here, and they're changing rapidly. A conversation about what all this means, whether it's transportation or housing or energy, utilities, the sewer system. Just what are we looking at here as we contemplate all this? And it seems to me that's on people's minds, but certainly I would look at Healthy Community Fund as well. So I think it's worth a review because the ground has shifted. Thanks.
So the topic I would like to bring up are the CCI legislative priority items. We presented 4 the other day, which were the hemp permitting issue with the state Department of Agriculture, the Dalwhinnie highway signs, the $1,000 cap, raising the $1,000 cap on violations of county code, and the RET taxing ability, real estate transfer tax. Also, Nan Sundin is strongly supporting a 5th one, which is a differential response in adult protection services. That she really wants us to be supporting that. Based on the discussions at CCI, there were about 30 legislative proposals that were made, and they will only be picking 6 or 7 of them. And I think it would be wise if we narrow our list down to maybe 2 or 3 and really go for them and present good, strong cases for them. Based on the discussions at CCI, it seems like the hemp permitting thing, there are other avenues that we can be pursuing besides legislation that we can achieve what we would want to achieve on that. There was lots of suggestions from different counties that didn't sound like they would support that being one of the ones that a CCI priority. The highway sign issue, I think there seemed to be some support for that, and I think that that's one that I personally think that's one of the ones that we should be following. The $1,000 cap on violations of county code, it would be a pretty heavy lift to have it be an across the board raising the $1,000 cap on any violations of the county code. It would be an easier lift for CCI and for us to get something through that would have a narrower focus of just being violations of the county code pertaining to the airport. And in our case, that's the curfew violations that we were talking about wanting to raise. So that would be an easier, narrowing it down to just the airport county code issues would be an easier go at the state capitol. The RET taxing ability, there was kind of some blowback from some commissioners about that. I don't think we'd be able to get that through this year to have CCI take it on. That might be something we'd want to be just vetting ourselves with our own legislators, and it's probably at least a 2-year process anyhow. So what I'm suggesting is that we take the highway signs issue and the $1,000 cap issue on the county code violations as the 2 we are presenting, and then put in some strong support for the Larimer County's proposal for the differential response in adult protection services. So Kelly, especially, what's your take on my take on that?
Yeah, I think that, I don't think we made the best argument in favor of hemp. I will say that, because you and I had a follow-up conversation with John Ely where I think we could probably offer a little better argument. The response there was, just zone it, like just zone the use. John Ely didn't think that was very compelling because we don't want to take away agricultural production in our zoning. We're just specifying one specific product and asking that they align the regulation of that product with the regulation of recreational and medical marijuana. So we could go back and make a stronger argument there. I think one of the questions that they always ask about these bills is, have you reached out to the agency to see how they would respond? And we were able to say, yeah, and CDOT is not giving us a compelling conversation. So we can't address it through CDOT. Mm-hmm. And we argued that, we think that the legislature would want to have a say on this form of marijuana advertising that's happening functionally through a loophole. The RET, I think people just sort of rolled their eyes like, yeah, Pickens County, you bring this every year, and left it at that. And then the violation, my thought there is that if we narrow it just to airports, it won't have a broad enough appeal to CCI, and so they wouldn't take it up as one of their top issues.
Okay. George?
So, given that disparity between the two comments, we have Steve's recommendations. Kelly, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing we pursue, and I think
I missed that. You broke up. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I think that we should consider to pitch the Clean Colorado, legislative fix to the highway signs.
Mm-hmm.
I agree on that. I don't disagree with the county fine, cap. I just don't know if it will go far. If it's limited to airports, again, it loses that broad-based appeal from CCI. And then the RET, is probably, we should talk to Julie McCluskey about that, given her finance roles. And then the hemp, I think we can go back and make a stronger argument if this board wants us to, but there was just a lot of we don't need legislation to fix that. You guys can go fix it right now.
Yeah, so I would support going back and with a little stronger argument for hemp and maybe explaining that a little more in detail that may provide a little better understanding.
So part of the issue, if we kind of narrow our ask on it to requesting that the Colorado Department of Agriculture, before they issue a permit for hemp growing in a county, that they consult with the county, which right now they don't. They didn't even know in the case, right. I think in the case of the one by Kathy Markle, that's partly in Eagle County, partly in Pickens County, the Department of Agriculture didn't even know that there was in two different counties. And the residence of the property is in Pickens County, but they issued the permit without even kind of knowing the issues there. So that could be how we could narrow it to just request that the Department of Agriculture consult with the county. Or we could say that the county would also require a permit alongside the Colorado Department of Agriculture permit. That would be two different tactics we could take. George?
Right. I don't think consulting would really address our issue, because we can consult and they can still just issue a permit under the standard ag. So I think what we're looking for is for counties to have local jurisdiction, just like we have with marijuana, to be able to make those decisions.
I would just note that there's two questions I know I have outstanding before I think we could make a good pitch on this. Is one, is a special use permit a viable land use code tool to avoid legislation? And two, how does this affect, is there an effect on right to farm counties? And we would have to formulate our ask so that there isn't a negative effect on right to farm counties, or we wouldn't get the support.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I would, it sounds like you've already started a conversation with John Ely, and you guys come up with a strategy would be great.
So this Friday, the Front Range District is meeting, and we can be on the Zoom call with them and present our cases on all of ours. So that's why I wanted to bring it up today, so we could know, what our strategy is, and even going into Friday. Then the Mountain District meeting is the following Friday that we'll be participating in that. So that's just opportunities for us to present again to smaller groups of counties and kind of hone in on our, improve our messaging to them. And, kind of narrow it down so we can have better chance of getting ours picked by CCI. Now, if CCI doesn't pick it as a legislative priority, we can still pursue whatever we want with our state legislators.
Right, right.
Kelly?
So I'll just, you and I can work offline, but I just want to, you know, if we're asked, is it fair to say that we would prioritize the highways and the hemp bill first, and then the fines and the RET next? Is that fair to say from the board?
George is shaking his head yes. Patty?
Yeah, I agree with that, and then supporting the bill out of Larimer County with Nan's help in that one. Yeah, I definitely agree with
And
that.
I think, yeah, there's a couple bills that I think already, of the 7 that they're going to pick, there's probably 3 that I think have a lot of traction.
Yeah,
That being,
several
there was a
rows
lot of
right to the
support for
top
that
that
one.
looked like they were
Yeah.
had
And-
the inside
Kelly,
track.
I will definitely work with you on talking to state legislatures like Julie about RET. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we got enough to go on. Greg?
I was just going to say it's unfortunate this highway sign thing has to go to the legislature. I don't understand the lack of response on the part of CDOT, and it's really frustrating that we're using our ammunition on something that should be much easier.
Right.
And I don't know. I just had to express that because it's frustrating that one is in the way of. I think the RET's important. The code violations are important. The hemp permitting, that's important as well. And then certainly Nan's suggestion there. So do we not see any alternatives to this highway sign issue that we have? If we don't, then I guess we need to do it, and I'll go along with the board here. Just wanted to call that out for a minute.
Patty?
yeah, I still think we should
Kelly.
1041 and rip them out of the ground and send them to see. You know?
Yeah,
I've been designing a machine in my head that can do that very quickly.
in talking with Brian Pettit, the state does not want to just I think that if they like the revenue source they're getting, I don't think they really are looking at the size of the sign and what's being advertised on them. I mean, to advertise alcohol and marijuana on long state highways flies in the face, I think, of advertising. I mean, I didn't think we're supposed to be advertising to people underage, kind of like cigarettes. But anyway, I think that's a good point. And bringing the city of Aspen in for support.
The follow through.
Yeah, because right now the only way you can get out of those signs is if you agree to maintain all the state highways within your county. Well, we can't do that. And so it should be, there might be places we might accept these signs if appropriately sized, placed, and advertising. But for now, what they've chosen to do and where they've chosen to do it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, and there's really 2 issues. One is the sign and just their ugly, more signs on the highway, advertising. They're like small billboards.
Yeah.
Which we have a history of destroying those.
And if you've noticed the trash in the area they're supposed to be cleaning up, where all those signs are,
yeah,
there's
so then
a
the
lot of
one,
significant
that's
trash
the second issue is theoretically the companies doing the advertising are paying for having the road cleaned up by, I don't know if it's by CDOT. The road's not being cleaned up, it's being cleaned up by the woman from Twining Flats. It's in the Picken County place, the stretch that we have been doing as county employees. They kind of, I don't know, that's really the second issue. There's 2 issues out there.
Brian was making a call to CDOT last week, asking them to get somebody up here to clean up all that trash in that, especially in the median where that mattress is and all that. And I have not followed up again with Brian on that.
I'd love to see a photograph of all that trash piled up under the Dalwhinnie sign.
Over the Dalwhinnie sign.
All right.
Steve, you did well.
All right, it's 4:35. Does anyone else have any other open discussion items for today? you will get another crack at it next week, so,
No, tomorrow after our regular meeting.
or tomorrow after the regular meeting, although.
I did have one just brief thing, only that, as you may have heard on Saturday, that Here House, which is a business in town, held the first ever mask fashion show, and it went off very well. They had their permit, they followed the protocols. They had about I don't know how many designers, but 80 different masks. And the idea is to model masks and normalize mask wearing. And they had little kids, they had families wearing the masks, they had models of all types. And I think it went over very well, and there'll be more information on that forthcoming. But the thing that was impressive is that the models all wore their own masks. So the ones that the ones they modeled, they put on top of. So they were double masked much of the time. And I picked up some masks. I think I should show you one. There's a denim one here, which I really like. This one has skis on it and skiers, reversible skiers on the other side. Very excited about that. This one has a tiger on it for, probably for my daughter. But anyway, it went off very well, and we're enthusiastic that people will just as soon leave the house without their pants than without their mask.
Well, Greg, I have to ask you, your biggest concern over this event was if your mask was going to match your shirt, or your shirt had to match your mask, or so. What did you choose?
I spent most of the week deliberating that, and I ended up wearing a very nice blue mask with little Edelweiss print on it, and I'll show you that one next time. It's a kerchief, actually.
Did it match your shirt?
Multiple layers. No, but it complemented the shirt very nicely. Thank you for asking. Sorry for taking up the time with that. But anyway, just wanted you to know, I think it worked, and it's also showed that it's possible to be safe and have fun in these this new era of COVID-19 pandemic panic. Thanks.
I never knew he was such a fashionista, but I guess he is.
Oh, yeah, neither did I.
Okay, if that's all for the good of the order for today, this work session is officially over. Grassroots, we are done. We will see everybody at noon tomorrow.
And be prepared.
And